What was the delay with it?
Is Denver ever having a council, they wouldn't let anyone fly in.
The wind.
There was,
Solid.
the pilot said that they couldn't even take off.
Lots
You know,
of
the weather
wind.
was fine, but they weren't letting traffic into Denver.
It was probably
Probably
just
too many
you.
were circling.
Yeah.
Probably just you.
We
Could have
had,
been.
They want to make you late to PROSTAC.
we had that happen it was actually this past summer, because of clouds, they made us land in Pueblo. And we had to hang out in
What's
the
up, Lindsay?
airplane in the Pueblo.
How are you?
for
Good, how are you?
hours
Good.
on end.
So we're
6
gonna go
hours.
in November? 6 hours on the plane? My husband's doing it too, he's like,
They
"Whoa."
canceled
We all
flights,
kind of
so I
got
flew
past
out
the scratchy
Monday night,
phase last
and it
week.
was
For sure.
worse than
That's
flying
good.
on
He
Tuesday.
says that shaving his neck is
Like
the
I
key.
flew out in the blizzard.
It
It was
is.
snowing and planes backed up de-icing.
I wonder if it's delayed today because of the wind.
That's what it was. It was the winds. The gusting, and they couldn't land, so they were holding. to
Especially if it's crosswinds.
They didn't have enough, too much air traffic. So anyway.
All right, well, we're still waiting on a couple, Aaron and I will on summer, but we'll get started. So call order November 18, 2015, meeting of PROSTAC. Open up for public comment, though I will say that if you have any public comments regarding the Coal Creek Crossing Trail, we're going to bring that up to the first agenda item, so I'd like to wait and have comment when we get to that. So, anything else? All right, so we're going to, like I said, pull up the Coal Creek Crossing discussion to have that first, and then we'll get back to the agenda after that. So, to do a little background on those who aren't familiar, the Coal Creek Crossing development is the one that's under construction down here at the end of Coal Creek Drive, across from Fountain Park. This development goes back over 10 years from when the first development plans were looked at, 2005, I believe. And there's a trail through the town open space all the way back that far. It was reviewed again as a preliminary development plan in 2009. Trail alignment's there, and then it was reviewed as final development plan in 2012. Trail is there, but there's some question as to whether, even though the trail is on the development plan this whole time, whether it was really discussed by PROSTAC and OSAC at the time. So tonight we don't really want to address what the committee's feeling is on the trail necessarily, as much as we want to see, is this a topic that the committee wishes to discuss in more detail, and if so, we should probably take it to the board to ask if the board wishes us to discuss it. The reason for that is, well, one, it's not on a work plan, but also this is part of a final development plan that's been in place for 3 years with the project's under construction. So it would be a little bit unprecedented for something to be removed at this point. However, we'd like to discuss primarily the east-west trail, which goes at the southern portion of this open space. The little one that goes from the southwest part of the development into the county open space. Again, both of these have been here all along, but that one, I don't think there's any question that one would be in there. It's just a question of how the committee feels about the east-west connection that goes into original.
And it also goes through the historic Hake homestead.
The conservation.
Well, the conservation easement and the homestead, it goes right through there and right by houses, right into original town, which, if we had actually discussed it, I would have thought it would have gone to the historic commission, that they might have had something to say about that too, whether we wanted a trail through there or not. That's, another reason I wonder. I get that it's been on the plan, and I looked back myself and saw that, but the fact that we never talked about what's going to happen when it hits Charles Street. Is there going to be
Can we just touch base on timeline of, I mean, the development's being constructed, the roads are in, the houses are going in. This is one of the last pieces of their full build-out of what they've put forth. So is this something that's already in place that we would stop the, I mean, it's a last piece from most of this, but.
I would say spring next year
Right, I know,
is their
because-
timeline. It's not,
Is there-
it's a crush or fine trail. It's,
But it's still, it's a last piece of what they're putting
Mhm.
in and exact alignments. I'm assuming there's been plans and documentation written up on, you know, all the grading. You can see how detailed that plan is.
Mhm.
That's got a lot of refinement to it. And the trail itself, I'm sure, has less refinement because you're typically following an existing swale or something.
Right.
You know, and to me, it's just a question of, you know, if we want to go back and review this, how much are we trying to undo what has been put forth already in all these documents?
mm-hmm.
I'm just,
I got,
I'm asking.
I
you
got,
because-
I got a serious question to ask about this. As I stated before, there's also a sewer line there. Are
But that's
gonna
what
put-
I'm saying.
We're gonna put a trail on top of a sewer line? I mean, let's be smart about it. Is that, I mean, we do it all the time as what? Is down by wastewater treatment plant, prime example, there's a 12-inch potable line going east and west and north and south, like a four-way T. A part of it goes over the trail. We had a water break, the town had a water break, I fixed it, we had to replace some of the trail. I understand that, let's get the gist of it. But did we ask the property owners as a town and how they feel about the trail around it? Down there at Charles, as well as the Cufter subdivision, because I am a Cufter, and I know how we feel about that.
I understand, and that's
How
why
do
I'm
we feel about
asking, it seems that these documents have been vetted and approved at some point by some level. I
Back in
mean,
2009, we were worried about the water. Our water rights coming down through the pipe. My uncle was.
Did did PROSTAC ever comment
Well,
on
that's-
this?
that's
Well,
why
yeah, so,
Okay.
If I may,
yeah, if we can have Jim, so Jim Payne was the chair of PROSTAC at the time in July 2012, when PROSTAC looked at this. Just to be clear, Sandy and I were on
Yeah,
the
I
committee
remember.
at this time. I don't remember discussing this in detail.
Yeah.
Aaron and Darrell were on the committee at the time, but neither of them was present at the July 2012 meeting when we discussed it. There were several updates at later months that year too, but Corey, you're right. I mean, whether or not PROSTAC actually discussed it, the board, the town board, several iterations of the board
Had to
would have
discuss it.
seen development
I mean-
plans over the last
Yeah.
10
I
years.
mean, I work on the design end, and we have to go through a lot of approvals, and, you know, we are an advisory committee to the board.
Yeah.
So no matter what we looked at and recommended out of that meeting, the board still has to review it, and there's an approval of all this documentation somewhere.
Right, so if I may, and my interest here, I really have two interests. One is just providing whatever history I can, because I've had questions about it. I was chair at the time, I was also on OSAC, so remember, I was going through a parallel process, both in 2009 and 2012. So, the actual, and this, it went dormant, you know, there was a discussion in 2009, and then it came back rather quickly in 2012, and even, I think it's either in the minutes
Mhm.
somewhere, I actually made it clear that this was sort of given to us one night and said, up, yes or no, up or down. So there was no time, there was no process for discussion. So my two interests are one, just providing the history and why I don't think we ever, why I'm sure we never
Okay.
agreed that. And secondly, I just wanted to make it clear historically that PROSTAC never really did vote on this or approve it. Beyond that, I don't have I'll leave it to you, I don't have a strong position on this. I have maybe a thought about whether this trail makes sense or not. I have one question first, and I'm not sure this wasn't part of the problem. Where is the county trail?
County trails.
I'm not sure that we
It
didn't
runs
think,
parallel.
I'm not sure we didn't think that was the county trail. But I can tell you this, we never, in OSAC or PROSTAC, ever took up the subject of a trail cutting through this open space property. The entire discussion and assumption and our recommendation was to make sure that a connecting trail went off to the south, from the southwest corner to the county trail. And Patrick,
Yep.
I'm beginning to think we just assumed that was the county trail at the time,
Okay.
quite frankly. But I can tell you, we never, ever considered it. We never voted on or recommended or agreed to a trail cutting through east-west, cutting through that property. In fact, and I can tell you the reason why the evidence is there, because all of our discussion, all of our recommendations were keeping it, were not to touch that land, to have that one trail off to the southwest connecting. So we also, the other area of discussion at the time was that we wanted to make sure that there were no multiple access points from the properties into the open space. Because that would just create social trails and provide more degradation of that parcel. And the other things, by the way, just that we looked at the time were the common area park and the connection from Cold Creek Crossing across to Founders Park, because at the time that was something we were spending a lot of time on. So it was given to us very quickly. There was not a lot of time for discussion. I made sure that was in the notes, and essentially, I can tell you with virtual certainty that we never, ever agreed to that. Now, having said that, my advice to the committee is it really doesn't matter. I mean, let's assume we had, and you all looked at it and wanted to. I know some of the trustees don't recall this and don't remember agreeing to this either. So if the best thing for the town and the best thing for that parcel is to reconfigure that alignment or look at it, then do it. Just, I'm not saying fight it. I'm saying if my advice is that if you all, and I'll stay out of that, but if you all decide what your thoughts are about that trail, whether it makes sense or not, and pass that on to the board, then if there are members of the board who want to pick it up and say, I'd like PROSTAC to look at it, spend more time on this, or whatever, then they'll do it. And if they say, no, it's not worth it, or we don't agree, or we need to go ahead, they'll go ahead and leave it there. I mean, that's my advice to you. And then the only other comment I have is, I really think we assumed at the time that was the county trail, connecting to the county trail, because the county trail isn't shown. I see that now, and I bet you that's what everybody did. But I would question the wisdom of cutting that across with a trail. I know there's a cost issue because the developer has pledged to build that, but ideally you'd probably wait and see what the social trails were, what the demand was. We've done that in so many of the other parks. That's a standard way of addressing this kind of thing. Where do people decide they really want to go? And then pick the best alignment, because you don't want to have multiple alignments. As you put one in here and then people decide they want to go there, all of a sudden you're fragmenting the land even more. So social trails in areas like that, like the social trail that goes along the creek on the north
Rock
side.
Creek on the north side.
Yeah, I mean, they're really tough. If people start going there, it's hard to, so, find out where people really need to go and want to go, that makes sense. But I can tell you, and I would like it on the record, even if it's just in this room, PROSTAC never approved that. That doesn't mean they opposed it, it just didn't get looked at. And one other point, it was never included on multiple years of the annual trail plan review, either OSAC or PROSTAC. So, and there was also quite a lot of discussion with the county, and I know there's a letter from BOCO concerning that's in the history, but there was also a lot of discussion with Boulder County at the time. So I don't, it wasn't in the 5-year review for all this time. So that clearly shows you it just wasn't, people really didn't understand what it was, and it wasn't on the radar.
Well, just to be clear on that though, the trails proposed in Town Center aren't on the 5-year trails plan either. I think that might be an oversight that since they have a separate funding source as part of the development, they haven't included in the 5-year trails plan. But we can certainly update that next year to make sure we're not overlooking anything.
It's a little different.
But I think maybe to make this flow a little bit easier, if we just go around and get each person's thought on whether or not we think we should continue this discussion, and then maybe we can have an up and down vote on it, to see whether or not it should be brought up at a later meeting with the blessing of the board. So, I don't know who wants to start.
Go for it,
I guess my thought is that as an advisory committee, if we determine something that may not have been, fully thought out or understood at the time it was approved, you could always bring it up to the board, hey, there's a risk that there's a trail that we're not sure anybody really understands what the purpose of this trail is, and you bring it up as a risk and ask them if they would like for us to investigate, further and advise them on a little bit of the history, the details, and what this is. And maybe they don't perceive it, they may already know that it's there, but when some of these things, like even the one that you said that over here, if some of these things fall through the crack, we notice them, we can always bring these things up as risk to the board.
I guess let's just go clockwise.
I can go in a circle. I'm good with that. On a foundational level, I don't necessarily have a problem with there being a trail there. Maybe the conversation that we need to bring up with the board is the trail alignment specifically. So I think that's worth a second conversation.
I strongly think we need to review this trail and find a different inlet and outlet of it, and talk to the community of this town, of Old Town, as well as Rock Creek, and get their input as well. This is a community trail, let's have community input on it.
Wait for the board to give us direction if we need to advise them.
Well, I'd say we need to talk to the board, but it all comes down to, from my level of understanding of documentation and what I see, is there a point in time where we need to review it and direct the board and they have to revise and change the routing of the path, but there's a timeline to get that all done because the developer's in there, he'll be out in a certain period of time, and if we don't have it resolved, we'll lose out on community trails that, we have a 5-year trails plan that don't get constructed in 5 years, so, if we have an opportunity to capture some properly aligned trails that were thought out, I think it's a good thing to, provide the direction from the board, and if we need to review where it inlet outlet's fine. We do that.
I think we need to talk to the board about it. If you look at the open space management plan, this open space property was only for passive use, they said, and providing just a future connection to the single tree trail. There's nothing in here that says cut through. If you look at the wildlife that's there, the red-tailed hawks are possibly breeding on site. It's a migratory place for the bald eagle right on the open space trail. The owls are breeding. So do we need another, I think we need to look at, do we need another trail that cuts through a very pristine open space area that is not expected to have that kind of use on it. In addition, what's going to happen, we haven't talked about what's going to happen when the trail pops out onto Charles Street. Are we going to provide parking? Are we, do we want to go through the historic Hake farm that the trail is proposed to go right through? And it's our open space. It's not Remington's property. It's our open space. So we should.
It isn't on Remington's property.
It is not on Remington's property. It's our open space.
I can understand that there's not a lot of consensus on whether or not this was properly discussed by this committee. So I can understand the desire to want to talk about it again. That said, we are an advisory committee to the board, and the board is not asking us to advise them on this issue. So I'm a little who are we to question them at this point? Because it's been talked about by the board, whether this trail specifically was, but the development plans were talked about by the board for over the last 10 years. So, but I don't think it hurts to ask the board whether or not they wish for us to comment.
I guess I'm last. My concept would be that, if, as a general rule, when trails are built in the community, whether they're going to be in town center or wherever, we're always asked to provide comment. And we were not asked to provide comment on this trail. And so the reality is, the board may not have commented on it, but I don't think the board generally looks at trails. They wait for us to give them advice and comment and their ideas. I have a serious concern about a trailhead coming up in the middle of original town. Those folks have they have small streets, they don't have sidewalks, and now all of a sudden we could have people parking down in that community where it's really not optimal, because people already have on-street park. I just think that we really should take it back to the board and say, we are concerned that as a committee, we did not make comment on this trail going across. We would like the opportunity to discuss it and come back to you, since we know it's not gonna be built at this, it's not gonna be built till, you said the spring, right?
That would, if I had to make a guess right now,
Yeah,
that's
I
when
mean,
they would.
you don't think they're gonna do it in the next 2 months?
No. No.
I mean, you don't feel like there's like this crazy rush that we,
Mm.
but I really think that, it's sort of our otherwise, we sort of shirked our responsibility by not giving comment on this. And, as Corbin said, they could come back, there's a risk. We did not comment on this. And so we could put it in on our property, everybody could say, well, what the heck happened?
Right.
Why did that happen? So I think we should ask them, could we, is it absolutely too late? We would like to make comment on it, and we'd like to do a little bit of, because for me, I'm looking at it, and I don't even know exactly where the rest of the trails are. And
It's
so,
right there at the corner.
if there's,
Yeah, so
Just
You know.
what's the county alignment?
but if this is gonna be the easiest way for people to get into the county trails, what concerns
county
you?
trails, so county trails right here, and a little bit of background, because I went back through it. The original, that original alignment has been shown since 2008. Now, 2008, and the committees,
When did the town acquire the property?
the town officially bought the property in 2010, and it's also
Right.
referenced in the,
But it's
ordinance.
2008, Remington owned that property. We own that
Right.
property now, and we have never
I'm not-
commented on that.
So I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I think having poured through it, it looks like the committee was either at the time purposely not asked, because it's been shown consistently. It's mentioned in various documents and ordinances, Tract F and the fence and the southern alignment. It seems to me that PROSTAC was asked to comment on a certain portion of this project. That was not it. Because you can see consistently from 2008 that this project has come up multiple times. So the only thing that I can guess, having this predating me, is that this committee was not asked to comment on it, or you guys would have. And I went back through all the notes, both board and PROSTAC and OSAC, and you can clearly see recommendations being made in support of the project. Not specifically commenting on the trail. And I think that what I'm hearing, that's where the breakdown is. And it's 50 pages, but I'd be happy that we could go through and look at that. The other thing to kind of know is, let me bring it up. Sorry, this isn't the best. Here's this trail alignment. This document's from 2007, 2008. Those of you who have been around long enough will remember that Remington Homes was probably like a 90-home proposal initially. If you look at the trail alignment with an additional half of a community, this was shown from day one. You can see that trail alignment is there. What this project evolved to is these homes went away over time. The town purchased the open space and the trail alignment stayed.
Patrick, I can tell, I now seeing it, what we looked at then, I can tell you what happened. Everybody assumed on OSAC and PROSTAC that was the county trail.
Mhm.
Because first of all, we were asked to do this very quickly. We hadn't seen it since 2009. Our focus had been on that connecting trail from the southwest corner to the county trail. We looked at it, that's what it looks like it is to us, at the time. I'm telling you, that's what happened. And so I think there's an obligation to the board to say, look, this wasn't really properly reviewed, and do you want us to review it?
I think that would clear up this disconnect, because
By
like
the
I
way,
said,
one other, if you look at, now that I know, now that I clearly understand what the final design is, if you could put that, the FDP.
You
By
want
the
the
way, we weren't
FD.
most of us weren't used to looking at FDPs, that was before Town Center. It wasn't, knowing that that's what that is now, and that the county trail's down here, then all of a sudden I begin to think, you may want to think of having a trail that runs along behind the houses, which originally we were fighting, so that people can then get to these other points to get to the county trail without having to go, bisect it, either this way or this way. So you may want to have a collector trail sort of that runs behind, because this is so close that now people are going to they're going to tend to want to go from there to there or from there to there. So you might want to just put a trail, sort of like it's a service road, but it serves as a trail behind my house in Community Park along the ditch, so that people can go along there to get to here or to connect to the trail. That may make some sense, but just a thought.
So, I mean, I think it seems pretty clear, but let's just have a quick up and down show of hands. Who's in favor of asking the board to pursue this further and who is not? So, all in favor? Opposed?
by the way, I'd spoken to some trustees, and they were, the ones I spoke to were open and said, look, this wasn't proper. There was an oversight, and this wasn't fully looked at. And they, let's talk about it, so. What I don't understand is why OSAC wasn't brought into this. They just met.
They're aware of it, they have been brought into it, and they're aware of this. They were invited to tonight's meeting to discuss it additionally as well.
All right.
Just a real quick question. Is there a trail on West Coal Creek Drive? I mean, I've seen people walk out there, but is there one on the back of, right up there?
Down here?
Yeah.
No, it leads to a
It goes to a dirt
connect,
road.
it goes
Yeah,
to the dirt road
but
to a
there's not like
connector.
Yeah,
You get up, no, there's not a formal trail.
because that's where the connection comes around and crosses.
Right.
And that's been shown on the 5 years
Single
trails plan in
Yeah,
different
'cause,
iterations.
I mean, there's the connection over there where, that's where there's the gap in there. And that's
Right.
where you get that southwest
Yeah.
spur.
I think,
And then
let me see
the
the
real
other.
question is the eastern connection there.
And this was, again, for those of you that don't remember, let me see if I can rotate this here. This was the document that the board viewed on a couple of the different occasions. And again, it's there, but what I'm hearing is that the assumption might have been that that's the county's trail.
Right. I think you need to show, when you show it to the board, you need to put the county trail in also, so it's clear how
You
things
can-
are
the
really.
corner of it's right there.
Yeah.
But also
Right. Well,
that they
it
really
goes
are
off.
just parallel trails. I mean, there's really.
Yeah, the creek separates them.
Yeah, and that's about it, going right through our open space that I think, when the developer put the trail in, it's their land, but now it's our land. And we have decisions to make, I think.
Well, we'll present it at the next board meeting to have for direction. All right, so
What's that?
When would that be?
Monday.
this coming Monday?
This coming
They have
Monday,
a
the
meeting?
23rd, correct.
Okay. I might actually, at the end, ask about how we want to present that, because I don't.
I was gonna say, are you gonna
I'm
draft a
gonna be-
response and-
I don't know that I'm gonna be here, so. All right, well, we can talk about that during that meeting at the end. So let's jump to item number 3, review of the town center parcels 1 and 2.
All right.
Take care.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
As we know, there were some changes
Yeah.
coming forward from the developer that will affect at least parcel 2, I guess. So Patrick can just review
Yep.
those.
So, as Peter mentioned, and as we kind of touched on previously, is town center's starting to move a little bit. I think half of this group in this room remembers the really long engagement process, which we got to kind of a
a concept plan, which I'll show you. And then over the last couple months, developer has made some tweaks and changes. And then just so you guys are in the loop, there's been talk about staff going out and getting an FDP to actually start to memorialize these parks and set these in stone. So what I'd like to do is get everybody up to speed on just what these parks are, what the proposed changes are, and then just get your guys' brains re-wrapped around the fact that over this next year, staff will be working with a design firm to come up with an FDP, which will go to the board. The town's gonna be the applicant at this point, not the developer, since they're town parks. And that's been a request to the board all along. That way, town property, town parcels are designed by town and town contractors, not developer and developer contractors. So there's kind of just the quick.
Can you clarify that real quick, Patrick? Because parcel 2, the developer does have a say in that. And I seem to recall originally that they were going to be involved in the actual planning, like their planning people were going to be involved in the planning of that parcel. But
Right.
you're saying no, the town will actually be responsible for
Right,
that?
so what was agreed upon in terms of land use, and again, just, I'm gonna kind of generally go over all of it, assuming that maybe nobody in the room even particularly remembers it.
So Patrick, the April 13th, 2015 drawing is the most current revision?
Correct.
I swear I saw a road later ones.
I don't
Because
believe,
this one still doesn't show the road in the correct alignment, so the previous board meeting.
Well, that's
great, I'll go over
coming-
that.
That's what's coming out.
So it'll be the two, so we'll have the two, we'll have two ideas that are gonna kind of merge here. And I'll do my best to kind of show them side by side.
I'm sorry.
Come on, Corey.
I'll wait for it.
Parcel 1, what we refer to as parcel 1, existing Coal Creek Trail. Parcel 2. Now what Peter's referring to is very early on in the process, this parcel 2 was agreed upon to be active recreation, in that it would be a flat programmable field. That's the extent of what I'm understanding is the developer's involvement in it. This group, with design concepts and Greenplay, went through a very long community process and some different exercises, basically to come up with what you see here, which is an open field with some good slope here. Maybe you have enough room to do a really small informal baseball field for kids. I mean, we're talking like maybe smaller than Kuffner Field at Founders Park. Maybe a spot to bring in a trailer for a portable stage or something along those lines if you wanted to do a concert in the park. Some parking up along Marshall Road as Marshall Road will continue through. Taking the existing detention pond, making some improvements to it, and then adding kind of an entry plaza and an overlook plaza here with the restroom.
Was there any clarification ever on whether or not that detention pond could retain water at all times? Because wasn't that a question of the board?
Right. It can. I think the questions that were brought up at the time is aesthetically, how much money would have to go into that to make that a decent looking pond as opposed to a detention pond.
But there is no firm answer on that then at this point?
No, we weren't, well, right, we were not asked to come up with a specific plan, but as we would go through this FDP process, those would start to surface. My guess is, it's my understanding, and George, you can correct me, the water from here comes from the marketplace and either further,
Yes,
so a lot of this is
all this is
just
just
runoff.
Runoff water, gutter water, that runs from Costco, Super Target, all the way down by Buffalo Wild Wings, coming right here by Sagamore, down across and shoots right here. And then there's drainage, concrete drainage that shoots straight to the creek with, I think it's 2-foot concrete pipe that shoots across. Maybe it might be 18-inch concrete.
I think what they're proposing is to bury it at an 18-inch, I think is what I
But
remember.
it's 18 inches already there.
Oh,
So,
okay.
but the most important thing about that is that there's road fines and it's stagnant water.
Mhm.
A lot of water comes in, but the water table, the level where outlet water goes, stays in there year round.
Yeah.
And we're talking, it is some dirty, nasty, stinky water.
Yeah. And that,
Mosquito infested, like you would not believe.
and the board has asked us to kind of look at that.
And I don't know why they put a little kids baseball park right next to a mosquito habitat area. Let's rethink that maybe possibility. Do you want your kids playing by a mosquito pond? I don't.
I'm from Houston.
It's a mosquito farm.
Virginia,
So,
everything's mosquito.
Improvement to the existing trail, the existing Coal Creek Trail, which is crushed fine, will become concrete. You would have a underpass, again, Marshall Road would kind of rise up over the creek and kind of continue on. Moving over here into parcel 2, big field, 210 by 400 feet. Biggest, I mean, it's bigger than Williams Field. It'll allow you to do just about anything in terms of an athletic surface down there.
Could you run like multiple little kids soccer games
Sure.
at the same time, like this
Mhm.
direction?
I think we determined that you could probably fit 3 fields in
Okay,
there.
that's cool.
Over here. A decent sized playground. Early concepts had the playground kind of shown back here, but due to some floodplain issues and some Clomar F, which is conditional letter of map revision, which they had to go through to change the topography over there, that had to move. Again, kind of just a nice gathering pavilion, maybe some kind of play feature of some rocks being embedded into the hillside here for kids to play on. This group talked a bunch about the slide, the hillside slide.
Did the Coal Creek Trail stay crushed up on the top?
Right here, it converts to crush.
So just that one segment,
Right.
and it goes back to concrete?
Right. And I'll be honest with you, Corey, I don't think we had a lot of rhyme or reason to that. And
Seems odd.
yeah, my guess is that seeing comments from the board lately on El Dorado Park, that also would be concrete.
It's not prescribed because of the floodplain or anything.
Yeah, you know, Daryl, that's actually it's a good point, but this piece of it here too is in the floodway.
Yeah,
I
and
was wondering if
boulders.
that underpass by a floodway.
Yeah?
Well, and the whole Louisville side would be in floodplain, that's.
A lot of it's in the floodway. I don't think we actually had a lot of rhyme or reason why
I mean,
that ended that way.
In Boulder, theirs is all concrete. And
Yeah.
it's all in the floodplain.
I view it, if you leave it as crusher, it's just a lot more maintenance.
Yes.
I mean, you're gonna pay for it one way or the other.
Louisville side is crushed though.
Not all of it.
But right on the other side of the underpass it is.
Hey, that's been, after the flood in 13 and rain we had this year, that area, they
Oh, yeah.
fixed it, and they washed it all off, and they fixed it, and they washed it all off, and so.
I agree.
I prefer crush because
I
it's
do
better on
too.
my knees.
I-
I love crush, but from a,
Well, and
Yeah.
that's,
if it's a
that's
small
where,
section.
My
we've
office
talked
is-
about having a solid concrete path with crusher on the side.
On the side, yeah, the 2
But that's where I was like, it just
Yeah.
doesn't match up here.
For those of you that remember, we kind of had this grand kind of I don't know, we were calling it the pavilion kind of entry because at one point there was maybe going to be a pavilion in the middle. But a really wide entryway that would lead to this grand staircase, which would kind of lead down into the field. And then I'll show you some elevations, but then this really cool concept of almost sandstone seating that had some really kind of unique shapes to it, almost like you'd be walking along Coal Creek and you maybe see some erosion. That was really kind of the plan. This is a really kind of steep hillside, steep drop from the road grade down. Now, originally, this has been shown as homes, and that just never really sat well with this group. It never really seemed to kind of make a lot of sense that you would have a road, then homes, maybe a restaurant here, and then you'd have them right next to the field. And the other thing, this field's going to be lit. So there was always this issue of how are you going to get people to this field? How are you going to get kids safely dropped off? And it was something that we went over several months trying to figure out. And when I flip to the developer's plan, I'll show you some of the changes that they've made where they've actually flip-flopped and taken this road and moved it and taken the homes and moved them back. But this is the quick version of this. Go ahead.
Back up for a second.
Uh-huh.
Did the board actually make a decision on those lights? Because I thought they themselves were wavering. We had wavered within the committee, about whether or not to recommend that be lit, and I think we ended up advising against. But
There hasn't been a determination. That, I would imagine the board would weigh in on that when this gets to an FDP level. And you're right, this idea of lights, there was also maybe a thought of doing another trail up here that would make this field a little bit smaller. There are, at this level, this is just concept master plan. There's still some gray area in there. But we're wanting to get this thing moving forward.
No, I'm visualizing, there's like traffic issues depending on how you get those lights in there too, because I'm trying to figure out if you're going up the hill or down the hill.
You are going
Lights.
up the hill here.
No, and even 36 though. Actually, it
Oh,
might be
you're
too far
heading
away
that way.
because you're coming around the corner and you're looking
Yeah,
at
you're
the lights there.
And what
Far enough.
we had spent just a brief little bit of time working with a light contractor to do a real brief study on the foot candle and how much that light would spread out. I won't get into it too much because it's not part of the discussion, but
And isn't the-
future hotel sites right here
So there's some blocking.
is as well.
And I was gonna say that it's annotated there on the side, say field lighting, full cutoff, fully shielded fixtures to prevent light spill onto Coal Creek corridor or residences.
Right. So,
Interesting thing is that if you have this grand pavilion, and you're making this thing grandiose, it means that that's what you want people to use. And you have to give them a way to use it. I mean, it just, like I said, it doesn't make any sense to have this grandiose thing, but then expect everybody to come in on another trail or some other ways.
Right.
And what's the purpose of having this grandiose entranceway? And it's like having, you walk into your house and you have this grand staircase, but everybody enters through the back door.
Yeah.
Why have it?
and it-
Well, I went through the laundry room.
And you bring up a great point, and as part of these discussions, and I can go back and find some of the board conversations, we've spent a ton of time with traffic engineers and parking engineers trying to figure out how do you make this work. We've talked about underground parking and above ground parking and medical office building parking and shuttle parking. So it's, again, these are all really good ongoing conversations that this group is going to be a part of it as we go along. But the parking issue and how do you get people to this field it's been huge. The other thing that's huge is where's the restrooms? You're in a floodway. You can't have restrooms in floodways.
They're in this grand staircase.
And for those of you that remember, at one point we had said, well, maybe you do like on Pearl Street, and you put it all the way up here. Or, when this was going to be buildings, maybe we try to keep a corridor open and have public restrooms there, like you would see at I don't even remember some of the examples, like you would be at an outlet mall or something where they have just a set of public restrooms. All comments that we're gonna have to bring all these up. So I think getting our heads around it now, this project's definitely gonna be coming. So.
Is that a divided road, Marshall, coming in
Right here it is,
all the way around? Okay.
to right here. We have
And
one.
there's no access to the current businesses over there, other than going back onto the chasm?
Where I believe the current access will stay right here, and then this stays. There's a little town-owned parcel in there.
Marshall, you could come and do it, and go back.
To go back out.
Yeah. Or to get to
The opening
I was just
down
curious.
further by Bryce Plus will still
Yep.
be there.
This one will be here, and then this
It's
stays.
gonna take time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, you'll still have the
Still
two
the
ways back
access,
out.
yeah.
into-
Didn't we leave the lighting question? Let's make sure they build it underground, even if they don't make sure that.
I think that's the way it was left, was that they would at least wire it
Wired, right?
so that they could add the lights later. There was no
This is great.
decision.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, go slower though.
Yeah, no, so I'm gonna go, well, what I was thinking, and I don't remember, we had presented this so many times, and I think Peter and Sandy were at the meeting with me. We actually had, there were lots of questions about, is it gonna be turf? Is it gonna be the hybrid? Is it gonna be synthetic hybrid where a third of it's turf and it's crushed coconut fibers underneath it? And so there was talk about, do we try to put in a dog area? So this has gone on for quite a while. But anyway, backing up,
Where's the line between the park and the developer, because of all these changes right up against there, is that a fluid line at this point?
You know, let me just to kind of,
Because I've seen their latest plans that, yeah,
All right.
totally change the access flow and where do they start and restart.
so if you guys are cool kind of bearing with me a little bit, I think it makes sense to show this now. This Corey over there.
Just kidding. He's a good straight man, but he's a kid.
It's not rest.
All right, so again, this at one point was shown houses and the road was back here. Most recent concept that the developers brought forward in September, and I believe I shot those links to the meeting to this group. It's worth watching. Realign Creekview Way, and then this becomes a hotel, and this still becomes a block that could have residential on it. But this now allows us to have the road and some drop-off areas to the park, and this potential drop-off area, which didn't seem to go over all that well with the board when it was presented. What they're showing, at least on this, is still having this kind of restaurant pub tucked right up against the field, and then, you know, I would imagine there'd have to be some kind of retaining wall here to kind of keep it. But so we're going from houses and street
Is there on-street parking? Is that one of the?
No, Daryl, I don't know that I could answer that with any certainty yet. To now street, yeah.
I mean, that would just add more parking.
Yeah.
in a sense.
Well, and did you ever get an answer on whether this plan moves the parking garage?
It does not move the parking garage. Right here, and kind of right in here,
But I thought there was a parking garage.
is a parking, what will be the medical office
in-
building parking, which will be
What
open
is
to
that,
the
block
public.
6? I thought there was a parking garage around there, wasn't there?
This would be hotel site with kind of higher end condominiums potentially around the hotel, very similar to what you're seeing in, it's the development on the north end of Boulder, up by that
Oh, the
historic
Holiday?
train, there's the historic train station up there.
Not
Oh, by
Holiday.
Pollard, by the car dealership?
Yes.
Oh.
30th and Arapahoe.
Yep.
Between Arapahoe and
Yeah, I don't know
Pearl.
where
That idea of
It's like
apartment,
a-
condos, and
Yeah.
hotel, all high-end, shared
Yeah.
parking. So Peter is correct in that presentation. There was some parking discussed here as well. And parking garage here, and, you know, BVI parking over here. So that's a little bit of a ways. So,
A random thought that just came to my head is just looking at this. This almost lines itself pretty nice to be able to do the Superior Mogul, the criteria,
oh, we're way ahead of.
way through there
Absolutely.
instead of through the. I
Yeah.
mean, this looks perfect for that.
Yep. We, well, and the other add to this is, originally the town square was really shown kind of right here, you know, kind of squared off. Now it really shifts over in this is BVI, this is what's going up now. This town plaza really kind of shifts, and this becomes a big Main Street event area that you could, I mean, picture conceptually, very low curb, maybe even no curb, probably pavers, outlets to do events, places to put tents, and then have some parking element around all this kind of retail down in here. So that's
Similar to like Prospect in Long Run,
correct.
how they have, like that is just sort of central common area.
Yep. And then really, again, if you guys have time to watch them, I would watch, you know, when the developer explains it, you really start to get a sense of the vision that they're trying to create down in here. It was a creative idea. So I wanted to keep you guys up to speed on this as much as possible, so we don't have to relive too much getting everybody up to speed when these FTPs start to come forward. But the questions you guys have brought up are definitely questions that are still out there.
Two more things come to mind that, you know, in a lot of little cities that I've seen that have something like this. One is we can probably expect a lot of folks using this area here because it's a natural area for folks just to run around, right? And
Mhm.
it's a well public place, it's gonna have sidewalks, folks are gonna be running around that a lot, it seems like to me. too, is typically now you'll end up, more likely when the field's not used, it's probably some kind of farmer's market maybe going in there on weekends, and how is that traffic gonna interfere with stuff?
So a lot of that is vision down in here.
Okay.
And keeping it in this kind of central main street. And really kind of only using this for athletic activity or just open play.
Okay.
Where it would be, when it's not being used, it could be a place for residents just to go down and picnic or really do whatever. You know, I think we heard a lot of throwing frisbees, playing, fetch with the dog, that kind of use, and then try to encourage and focus up here, all the events. And whether those events are controlled by an independent HOA or some kind of metro district, we're just not there yet.
But the idea is shutting the street down.
Correct. Yeah.
So what happens to people, like if you come around Creekview Way and you're headed down Superior Drive toward the ice rink and it's stopped there, like how do you get out of there?
We'd obviously have to have a coordinated traffic plan like we kind of do now.
Yeah.
Where we work with sheriff and, whether that's turnaround spots or you close it all the way down here.
Yeah, I mean, it
Or
seems like
something
you want to
like that.
pre-design that if you're gonna
Mhm.
have that whole idea of.
Yeah, or maybe you force people into the parking structure here, and then once it's full, you come down here and
And you
close it
turn
off.
around and go back out.
Something like that, or make, that's. So you can see that a little bit of a change. And then a couple things we didn't touch on. This is the liquor store here, so this is that trail that's gonna go from what we call the BRT, which is the bus rapid transit, kind of over by the RTD stop over by Costco. You'll have trail continuity from there all the way over to Town Center and over to, you guys have seen the pedestrian overpass that's over the highway now. That's what this trail ultimately leads to. And then when you're on the golf course side, so Louisville's here, you can see that 36 bikeway to avoid the golf course is going to come over onto the Superior side. So that's Superior's piece of the 36 bikeway, and then it'll go back over when you get up by Vista. So we'll have a trail that parallels that. It creates a lot of connectivity between us and Louisville. And that, if you guys remember, going all the way up to that Davidson Mesa underpass, this trail will eventually connect all the way up to there. So you'd have connectivity from the west side of Superior all the way to the east and connection points over into Louisville.
Patrick, from a connectivity, just sidewalk standpoint, are they intending to have curb, sidewalk, and then development? Is that what the double lines are showing?
Yep.
All the way through? So that gray trail at the top that comes from parcel 2 actually ties into a sidewalk up
Right.
there and ties back into the chasm?
Right. And this was, again, one of those requests that we had received from the board, kind of late, is to figure, this is a really aggressive slope in here. And at one point, with design concepts, we threw out there, hey, if we really want this actually might have to be stairs. It's that kind of steep, or it may need to really jog and have some contours for ADA
Switchbacks.
accessibility.
What's that little triangular shape left between the road, that piece right there? Is that gonna be just natural?
In here?
vegetation? No, down, right there and down.
Yep.
Is that just a natural vegetation?
Yep.
Similar to the green in the water?
I would imagine that we would do, native seed, but for this exercise, it was just kind of no man's land.
It seemed like gray was kind of development area that just kind of cut it off.
We had looked at maybe trying to do the park and loop or a park and drop off there, but it's such a steep grade as Marshall's going to kind of come up and over. And what I always kind of tell people visually is if you can picture the very eastern edge of the existing BVI building, if you look directly south, that's where Marshall Road would continue into Town Center. So, just want to keep you guys, this one's coming. So, we'll start to see a lot, and I want to get you guys up to speed as much as possible so we don't have to relive it too much. And if you guys are, let me know if you're interested in these documents, or maybe it's just better to send these out. I know Corey's,
I already have.
he's got his.
They're wallpapered in this house.
So, I don't know, time-wise, I don't know if we want to continue to kind of go through it. This was the main slide I wanted to show you, but you can kind of see the concept going down into the field from the grand entryway here. You can see the elevations.
One comment, wherever you have sidewalk and stairs and rails, you guys keep working.
Yes. Yep. And we'd even talked about, you know, what do you do if you've got these really flat sandstone seating areas for, I mean, 200 and some feet. And I can't remember if it was Trustee Hansen, but he had that idea of maybe you have little formalized benches or places where you could set your picnic down to stop that very thing. But yeah, lots of rails in this one.
Well, natural sandstone, if it's natural rock, you don't really have that much of an issue with skateboards. It's not a smooth,
The smooth.
cornered surface, but the staircase potentially.
So you can kind of get just a little bit of a feel of
Yeah,
what
that's
this
super
seating
cool.
would look like. So seating, walkway, field.
Little red rocks.
A little bit of the elevation. This is going back over to parcel 1, so kind of the big lookout pavilion, and you can see a little bit of this would be the existing grade down to the flat spot, working with the grade that's going there now. This imagery here, this goes exactly back to what George was saying about the water table. We asked Design Concepts to show this because when you're on McCaslin, this is the water level. So everybody will need to be really aware of that. Are we trying to create something visually that we think cars will see? We may want to take this into consideration because this is significantly lower and we'll have vegetation around it. But if you're over here on the sidewalk, there may be some ways to make it look pretty cool. But this is existing road grade, and this is existing grade of the detention pond. Just some concept pictures that we'd worked with on Design Concepts for that kind of amphitheater style seating. This is actually Founders Park. The idea was to create a place, maybe a fitness place, a place where groups would work out, plus groups would come and sit. Some ideas about that grand entryway as you're coming off McCaslin onto Marshall. This will really kind of be the main entry point into the community, so just some concept pictures and then maybe some ideas for the underpasses.
Where was that existing underpass from? It looks really familiar.
These are both up in
Yeah,
Boulder. You can kind of see a little bit of the layout.
So
The
is that going
scale.
to start to resemble anything like Cooper Park?
This one?
The water feature and everything, it's like right before you hit Purple Park, you know, there's that, just,
Yeah.
that's
I'm
kind of
not
what it's
sure.
shown at like, you know, whether you have found the circulation of water, some nice green
Right.
space and a little trail around it. And, you know, that is one of the kind of signature pieces on
Yeah.
the top of the hill up there. And it seems like it'd be kind of a signature piece coming in to this.
Or be
you know,
a grand entryway to the town.
Yeah, I tell you, this may be one of the trickier things that need to be figured out on this project. And I think it's gonna be expensive. I don't know how you
I mean, you
upgrade
gotta
that.
Yeah.
circulate that water, otherwise you'll end up with like Castle Peak down there.
Yeah, just where it kind of gets mucked.
Yeah.
Well, and kind of
You
the,
dredge it out and then it just greens over.
to kind of Corey's point, you know, Purple Park, those are all manufactured. We can get sod right up next to them. This, boy, I can't see us running sod right up next to them. I think there'd have to be some kind of plant material or something around it.
I'm just saying, the imagery is just starting to depict
Mhm.
something more similar to that.
You know,
And the expectations that, you know, you start achieving with that, board members see it, other, you know, community members, that starts to make me think of Purple Park, not
Mhm.
there's some dark
See how that
green,
paddle
yeah.
right there?
yeah.
With your road junk.
Yeah.
That's really fishing for kids.
But I mean, the way it looks, you're right. I mean, you
Yeah.
have the
It
sun
looks
with the
beautiful,
4 or
yeah.
5 ripples, you think that you could maybe go.
Those are contours, but.
There's
No,
an
I
island out
understand,
there.
but-
You know that much, there's an island out there.
Yeah, there's also big the concrete box.
Yeah.
outfall.
It's pretty
on
ugly.
this side.
Concrete boxes on this side.
This side.
Chasm, and then you have one down here as well. There's 3 total, 3 concrete boxes.
But I'm telling you what, if we could make the corner look like that, I'm pretty sure everyone would buy off on it.
Yeah.
It looks awesome.
Yeah.
And a quick shot of parcel.
Well, that's not just-
And I guess that's the
One.
other question, I mean, is there a lot of grading and rework of existing utilities that are within the zone?
Yeah, there is. You gotta do some regrading.
But I mean, that's understood that some of those things will be coming. Because I know that's like Eldorado K, you know, they were working with the grade to minimize some of the grading, but there's still some grading required.
Mhm.
Always. Do that, maybe
A
that's bird,
giant
right?
stone.
I know, I was like,
Just
is
for-
that garlic?
It is.
We wanted to show that you could still have a healthy riparian corridor.
It's a blue heron.
It's a blue heron, I believe.
That's
Yeah.
what I believe it is.
Yes, I believe.
So,
It could be a
So
gray
that-
heron.
and, which one, buddy?
I was like going to the end. Did you get to the end?
Yep.
Oh, yeah. So that's showing that rock seating
Yeah,
area on the
the
left.
Yeah, that's cool.
I like that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
It's a unique way to deal with bleachers.
It's a natural bench.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
And if you're then running or riding along the Coal Creek path, it's kind of something cool to look at
Well,
Shipping
through the
containers.
trees.
The other thing that's a little deceiving is Coal Creek doesn't run all year round through there. It's very, very shallow.
Let me see if I've got kind of.
Running is a relative term. It trickles sometimes.
Trickle.
Well, and it also needs significant cleanup to really, you want it to look appealing.
Oh,
There you go.
My question, I have a question
That's
for
what I
you
was
guys
thinking, like,
about
the
that
houses
pond.
are
Is
gonna
that
have-
gonna, are we gonna close that, are they gonna close that pond off? Or there was, water's just gonna, we're gonna have holding water there with a pump that's gonna recirculate? Or are they gonna have it just dump right back into the creek, run out?
Yeah,
That's,
that's-
that's the question.
that's
That's the
the,
question.
that's the process that we're trying to get ourselves to is
I mean, it's a
all.
lot of work.
Yeah, a lot, and I would imagine a lot of money.
But look at the location of it.
Yep.
Of course, you make something like that gorgeous and pretty, put
Yeah.
some willow trees or plant some willow trees or something like that.
And I
Put some green grass around
Trying
it.
to
Yeah.
make a signature out of the community. I mean, that's right off of the interstate.
Because right now it's dirt and an ugly retention pond.
Yeah. Put some sandstone in that pond with pump and water fountains,
People do
or
all this.
something like that, you get some people's attention, like, hey, what's that? Check that out,
Yeah.
let's go look at that real quick. Hey, look, there's a liquor store in Old Chicago.
Yeah.
See, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Look at that.
It's a
There you
beer,
go.
little pond, wheel.
Drop the kids off,
7
they go
years
to the liquor store.
Yeah.
Is there still
It's all in
discussion,
succession.
You can learn your history as you go up the hill.
is there still discussion about the field that it could be some other natural grass? I thought it was written off that it couldn't be turf because of the flood.
Right.
It has to be grass.
Has to be.
I don't think it has to be, like legally it has to be. I
That's
think-
the responsible thing.
I think that that's where the board landed is, it just, it doesn't make sense to have.
The cost if it were to ever flood and destroy the field would be too substantial, I think. Plus,
Yeah.
you would have some environmental concerns of all that rubber getting into the
Yeah,
water.
you know, the one thing that we did learn through this process, even here on the playground, is there is regulations, you take water flows, even with playground equipment, it would have to be oriented to let things run alongside it.
Interesting.
Yep. And Peter's absolutely right. The one thing that'll kill a turf field, and we're starting to see it at Williams a little bit, is when the infill, the crumb rubber silts in with dirt, done, you can't get it back out. And then it gets wet and it turns into concrete. So if you were to have any kind of flood event here, it would be silted in and you're back to square one on the field.
Yeah.
Because that was the advantage of putting the lights in. If you had a light with turf, it would be a year-round field
Right.
in this area. Like a trail that's marked around for many events.
So,
I don't know why I'm envisioning a Ball State, Louisville type field, and you can have a Colorado flag in the.
I'm in. I think there's been all kinds of visions for this field. Plus the draw of, you know, a turf field, indoor turf field at BVI.
Give us something nice to look at for my
Hotel.
office building.
Yep.
So the updated plan from the developer, is that on an agenda in December yet?
I believe that will be December 14th is the Monday, when Now, I haven't seen what plans are being submitted, but there is a town center proposal coming through. So,
All right. So we'll, you know, I'm guessing when the board sees it, they'll probably kick it back to PROSTAC for comment back. So we'll wait and see. All right, so let's jump to item number 4, discussion of the 2016 work plan. The changes were made based on last meeting and was emailed out to everyone. There's a printed copy in the middle table for you guys. So hopefully we can finalize this tonight. So if anyone, if you haven't reviewed it, when it was sent by email, review it really quickly now and let's see if there's any comments to change anything, remove anything, add anything is really probably the biggest question. If anyone has anything to add. And there was, so everyone remembers, there was some discussion of why it was stuff later on in the year. A number of things did get moved up in the year, but at the same time, we can't have everything in the first quarter. So let me keep that in mind, that we do have to have a work plan for the year. And at any point in the year, we can always, you know, jumble some of this stuff up. I mean, we can decide in March that we want to move something up from the quarter. This disbursement is more for planning. It's not, that's not set in stone as much as what is or is not on the plan is what's more set in stone. But when it falls, we can always change that as we go.
I've got a handful of questions whenever we're ready to start talking about it.
Does everyone need another minute to look it over, or are we ready to discuss? Go ahead,
And this isn't, really has to do with, because I've been here, Corky's saying, so you're probably gonna say, that's one question, because we don't do that, but here goes anyways. So, you know, I remember this past year, there was a disc golf event that was in the parks. Is there do we do any kind of involvement or working with any of that as part of the PROSTAC, or? Because I don't see anything like that where we work with the city and any kind of organized events like that.
So, part of tonight's discussion, agenda item is, the next one is to review programming with, the town's programming with Measure. Up to now, PROSTAC hasn't had a whole lot of involvement in the program. We're trying to change that a little bit. If you'll see, we're at least trying to get some updates into each meeting of what kind of programming is coming up. But we might choose to, yes, also ask to have a little bit more involvement in the programming. I mean, that is largely, that's much more of the staff thing. I mean, staff does that. Much of it is without board involvement in it, right, Patrick?
almost all of it.
I mean,
yeah.
so that's much more day-to-day stuff. So whether or not we want to get too involved, and we don't want to be trying to micromanage staff, but we could try to get a little bit more input into that. We can discuss that in the next agenda.
Along the same lines is, what about with HOAs, you know, a lot of the HOA events, is there anything that, again, it's the same type of question, not just with city, but with the Rock Creek HOA, is there any involvement or planning or anything that we do with them at all as part of the PROSTAC? I just didn't see some of these things in there, so I didn't know what we did.
So there's not a lot of involvement between PROSTAC and the HOA, or even the town and the HOA, other than just kind of a, you know, the HOA gets approval to use the field, and there's some interaction between the HOA and town for some of those things, but largely from a programming standpoint, no. That said, I mean, if anyone did get to go to Oktoberfest, which I actually was not there this year, that's an HOA event, but the town did that Nerf dart competition or whatever.
Kids were there.
So that was a test of doing a town programming event at an HOA.
I know there's a lot of, like booth support for some of these town functions we do, stuff like that. And then, is there any pre-plan for, hey, in these events, we want to support a booth, and is there a thing where, or do we just say, hey, the town's having this, we're gonna set up a booth, and it's like a last minute type thing? Any of that pre-planned ahead of time to kind of figure out where we want to show support for the year or not? Because I didn't see any of that kind of work plan to.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of just pops up at the meeting preceding the event. There hasn't been a lot of coordination for it. I think OSAC has maybe done a little bit more coordination for booths at events. Am I right, Patricia?
Yes.
I mean, PROSTAC really has not. So we certainly could do a little bit better job of that. I don't know that we really need that on the work plan so much as we just are conscious of it as agenda items. Because yes, I mean, anytime there is an event like Chili Fest or the bigger town events, 4th of July, it's pretty much a given that PROSTAC is going to be having a booth at. That's not something that we really need to ask to have. It's just there.
I guess my thought was having something like that on the work plan is that it's something that you do from year to year, and you keep up having this planning and figuring out, and maybe there's other things you want to support that just come up with. But I'm just trying to feel for.
So are you thinking that that's something that we would do as like a one-time work plan item, like earlier in the year? Because like I said, usually those events would be 4th of July, so July, and then Chili Fest, September. So maybe we do it in the second quarter of planning for upcoming booths.
Early in the year to say, hey, we want to do all these events, whatever it is.
And sometimes we do something at Arbor Day. Just depends.
That's right.
I'm kind of working my way backwards here. The third quarter, item number 2, and the fourth quarter, item number 3, are they related? That's the consider options for trail connection to Deva Mesa Underpass and Safe Crossing, as in review DRCOG funded path that will connect between Deva Mesa Trail Underpass and RTD. Are they related, and did one have to come before the other? I'm not sure.
So they're potentially related. Dr. Cog is going to happen.
PROSTAC.
That's going to happen in, what is it, 2017 or 18?
A little bit of both.
Okay. So that's coming up, that has funding from the Denver Regional Group, Dr. Cog.
And it comes out at this time, so it couldn't be evaluated before that? I guess my question
Well,
was.
because it's going to happen in 2017 is why we put it in the fourth quarter.
I guess my question was, would you want to review that before you consider options for the trails?
We could. It's
If they're related.
Yeah, there's a potential tie-in depending on where a trail connection to Davidson Mesa might occur. But like I said, the Dr. Cog is going to happen either way, so we're going to, even if we don't decide that, even if we decide not to recommend a trail connection to Davidson Mesa, Dr. Cog Trail is going to happen.
So the Dr. Cog Trail starts at the Davidson Mesa Tunnel and goes down Marshall Road into Town Center. So that's separate from crossing Marshall Road and getting into the trail system here. So that's why those two.
It's not, it's going to remain on the north side of Marshall Road. And so the question, which we discussed a little bit of options for a connection to Davidson Mesa, one was potentially crossing, having some type of crossing, even potentially a traffic light at where the Costco station is. I'm always forgetting the street.
Oh, 76.
76. And have that cross, and then you would connect to the Dr. Cog Trail, you would turn west on the Dr. Cog Trail to get to Davis Mesa. But the trail connection would actually be, well, where does it go from the corner of Marshall and 76 south into the town trail?
Loosely, but not really.
You know,
Yeah.
or it could be somewhere else. You know, it could be behind the Sagamore homes and have to connect somewhere. I mean, there's a number of different options that you may choose to look at that third quarter.
And then two final questions. Fourth quarter, item number 5, where you're reviewing the 2005 master plan. Is any of the purpose in reviewing, I'm trying to remember the conversation we had last time, but does that affect any potential work plan things this year? Do you want to bring that up and maybe reevaluate work plans this year, or is it no, really just to impact things in 17?
Well, so the master plan is a completely separate document. I mean, that doesn't really have a lot of impact on our work plan.
I thought part of it was you wanted to evaluate things that have been on there forever, and
Well, that's what it is.
and so that's where it could impact. If we're going to reevaluate things that have been on there forever,
To me,
More
that last
updated.
item ties to number 1 on our list in the first quarter.
yeah, that,
Because in order to really understand the amenities that we're proposing and putting forth as our number 1 items, you know,
Yeah.
understanding the master plan and what's already been achieved is telling me whether or not I'm following it with my amenity list that we're developing for the town.
So the master plan update would,
I
if
don't
we
need to update
decided
it, but I want to
to
review it.
do it, well, we can review it, we can certainly review it as part of the PROSTAC agreements, but the master plan update, which this is what the
Yeah.
fourth quarter item really is, that would most likely require a budgetary amount.
Yeah.
And that is not in the budget for next year. So it would, I don't want to say be pointless, but it wouldn't really be necessary to discuss as early as the first quarter, because we would be talking about, is this something we want to pursue in, probably not even 2017, it would probably be more of an out year, like 2018, 2019.
Well, I think, you know, from my standpoint, it seems like if we can just review the master plan itself and understand how that ties into the amenity list in the first quarter, we don't have to propose updating it, because I understand until town center is built out, that would really, you know, maybe check off some boxes on that. And we don't need to reevaluate the master plan until some of the major development that we are working on is complete.
maybe that's
Certainly,
just
I mean,
homework prior to doing the list.
Yeah, I think,
Right.
as part of the
Right,
amenity
right.
list, we
Well,
can
that's
certainly
well.
review. Because that's what the master plan is, its point of existing is basically to refer back to. It is a template for the town to work off of. So we can certainly review that in line with developing the amenity list.
And I was just looking at the first part, like the first part, it says review it. It says, then the second sentence is review need and possible timeline, but the first part just says just review it. Anyways, then the last question I had is the second quarter item number 5 is the recreation facility uses and being included in the pool. Was that something that we were trying to get implemented if there was, like, you know, the conversation we had with maybe potential fees for the swim team or whatever? Was that something that was trying to get added in 2016? The recommendation for fees for that, or is the recommendation for fees to that, would that be for something that happened in 17? Is that something that maybe if we run into issues where that could get slipped down the line, or is that critical to go on with what we want to do for?
I think the idea was that we do want to discuss it before the summer season, but this is going to be, if any changes were to be made, I mean, that's probably going to be a much bigger board issue. So the idea that it might actually happen next year, I personally think would be pretty slim chance. It's something that we're just going to want to discuss and decide whether we want to present to the board, and the board's going to have to decide whether they really want to delve into it. It could potentially be a long process.
And my question is really sole for that. If we get to the issue, you know, maybe we put that as number 6 then or something, because you know, if that's something that's gonna get bumped, something that can be bumped during the second quarter, you know, if we don't think it's really gonna be impacting 16, we can always push it later on.
Yeah,
I
so,
would prefer we not move it. I think it's an issue we really do.
I think we
need to
do
tackle.
want to address
Yeah.
it before the summer,
It's
whether or
definitely
not
more
anything
important
would
than
actually
leaves.
happen for the summer.
so it just really quick, it can't. So any changes discussed in 16 would be adopted and approved by the board in 17. So fee structure for 16 is set in 15,
Okay.
15 to 14.
So-
And I
So
think.
if you don't have the conversation, then you can't change it in 17.
Correct. And as this is a process, so we start working on the budget in April for the next year. And it takes a really long process and lots of background. And then what the board does is they'll approve a fee schedule for everything from tickets to your daily drop-in fee to the pool. And then I think that's where, you know, the group, you make some kind of recommendation, either to stick with it or to change it. And then the board considers that as part of the budget review for the subsequent year.
I guess, again, my purpose is, I don't think we need to not have the conversation. I do think the conversation needs to be there, but if push came to shove, and if these things are ordered, you know, priority, what is more important in the second quarter to do the weed and pest management or the facility usage if the facility usage doesn't have an impact for the summer of 16? It's kind of
The weed and pest management is probably the one item on here that takes all 5 minutes. I
Okay.
mean,
Maybe 10.
Okay.
Maybe 10. I mean, it's nothing that, it's basically just a review. Patrick presents it to us. We really haven't recommended any changes to
Okay.
it year to year. So unless we got kind of surprised and we all of a sudden we decided that, you know, no pesticides in town, and we want to have to do a whole review of this, I mean, it's not going to become a big thing. And that's just kind of an item that needs to be checked off in the second quarter for staff reasons. It needs to be reviewed by the end of the second quarter. So we can certainly switch the two, but
I'm just kind of looking at,
Yeah.
you know, what things can shuffle and what things can't shuffle, I guess, in my mind. You know, looking at this, if I would, just from not having to explain that, I looked at here and said, okay, well, if I couldn't get everything in the second quarter, the first thing looks like we could get bumped would be number 6, right? That's kind of the way I read this in my mind, without having this conversation either. So,
Can I ask a question about 5, the conducting a review of rec facility usage? Does that also include just the idea of opening the pool up to not just Superior residents? Is that how that reads as part of the conversation?
It was left a little bit more open so that I think we could do a little bit of everything as far as the usage of the pools and whether or not it could be open to non-residents, usage of the fields, and then the real genesis for this, if everyone remembers, was the Rock Creek Flyers usage of the North Pool, but we don't want to zero in on just them. I mean, we kind of want to look at it as a whole. And so, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that that part was included, because I remember that as discussion, but I wasn't sure if that was clear in the plan.
Patrick, do you feel the wording of that item leaves it open enough to address what Daryl's talking about whether or not the pools could be opened up for non-residents?
I think when we're talking about usage and fees, the conversations I've heard with the board, that has encompassed that policy of a resident or a non-resident.
Okay.
And I think creating or recommending whether you would want a separate non-resident fee, it would be captured in there. Because what we have now is just the guest fee. And the guest fee implies you have to pay with the residents.
Right.
We get lots of people that ask about a non-resident fee, and we just say, right now, we don't have one.
Right.
You can't come in.
Didn't we put that in there as part of, okay, let's get ahead of it before the season starts, with the thought process that we would continue to review it for the whole year, so that maybe if we have to make, you know, the discussion here was, you know, especially you, maybe there's something wrong here, we can fix it.
Well,
We can't do that unless we have the information at the beginning and then the end of the summer. That's the way I read it. So.
And we, realistically, any kind of proposed change would need to be made to the board in the middle of the summer, because that's when the budget process starts. So
For
it's
the following year.
for the
We're
following
gonna be able
year.
to do it- We're gonna continue to get better numbers, better
Yeah.
more accurate, we've requested it.
Yep.
Also within that recreational facilities, does that also include like things like last year we said programming of Cuffner Field was acceptable? And is that a piece that we were gonna bring up and check if the programming is acceptable or if it should be cut back or extended? You know what I mean?
I think
Like-
that's, in my mind, that's a separate conversation.
Well, I'm just,
And that's where the
recreational
board-
usage, there's
Right.
not another line item in here about
Right.
programming of fields, and I believe, you know, a lot of the fields are programmed, there's certain ones that we've made exceptions for, and just want to make sure that's still correct. Or are they gonna, you know, come back again next year and ask the same question, and we're gonna look at each other again and say, how did last year work?
The way I remember that conversation going when it was presented was that now that the board approved it this year, it was basically up to the board as to whether or not they would continue. I thought that they basically looked at it as, well, this is gonna stand from here on out unless the board decides otherwise.
Well, you know, I would have to
But
go
do
back
we want to
through.
specifically address it as
We,
PROSTAC?
if I'm remembering this, the group made a recommendation and we had some we had some strict criteria on like number of hours.
Exactly.
And I thought, and again, I'll check and follow up with the group. I want to say that it was kind of, we would try it for this year
I think
and
that's-
reassess.
Mhm.
There,
Well,
I
that's
think
why
there
I
was an
wanted-
evaluation piece to it.
That's what I recall. I just
So
don't-
maybe we have to put that as the first quarter item, because they started, what, beginning of April and March, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe we have to put that as a first
They'll
quarter
start
item.
registering in January.
Evaluate the programming.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's any other programming requirements that we have to address. I just remember that was one of the main one last year.
Anyone else?
The only other question I was gonna ask is, I guess I see it at the bottom, that we're working throughout the year with the trails plan and the trails survey. And it seemed to me that our PROSTAC amenities list, you know, I don't know, I think we should try and tie some of the trail priorities into that potentially, because it seems like that's our one bullet point of hot, you know, 1, 2, 3 items that are, you know, if we had money, these would be the top 3 things to, you know, look at. I just
Well,
don't know
that's
how
kind
they
of
tie together,
The 5-year
because I don't
trails. So
remember.
if you remember the 5 year trails plan, we were gonna look at adopting something similar to the amenities list, where we're gonna try to address it not as a year-to-year plan,
Right.
but as this is priority number 1, 2, 3, 4, and down the list. So we would have a prioritized list from 1 to 20 or whatever it is. And so the idea would be that you're gonna tackle 1 first, 2 second, and 3 third. And it's gonna come wherever the budget allows.
Right,
And-
I just think that there's some, what are that amenities list, like there's big picture items, and then, you know, there's no mention of trails in that, if I recall correctly, it was all just fields, indoor, it was pretty much everything except for trails, trails were excluded.
Because we have the separate trails. That's the reason why. We basically have the
Okay.
2 lists. You have the amenities list and the trails.
As long as we're addressing it, you know.
So are you saying that you feel like we should have trails integrated into that plan because we feel like building the trail from, I don't know, here to somewhere is more important than putting in a water feature, that it should be included in that list as the same?
Because I'm viewing it as 2
So, I
separate
mean,
lists.
is that what you're
and
saying?
to me, you know, it seemed like this PROSTAC one, there was the item 1, 2, 3, and it was like, well, this one's the highest priority, and it's more important to get a field regraded or a new turf field than it is to get this trail. And at this time, they're 2 totally separate, isolated pieces, where it seems the integration
Are their
somehow.
budgets different, or are they the same?
Neither has.
They're funded, the trails, a little bit of background. The board has wanted, I think, a separate trails list and an amenities list.
Okay.
And then there is different funding. So trails are typically funded as a separate budget item. Sometimes the money comes out of the same pot, but it is earmarked for trails. And then open space funding pays for trails, which couldn't pay for certain types of amenities. And I think that that's.
So we don't need
So
to
the-
time together.
the
Right.
I was
listed-
just kind of trying to understand.
Like I said, a different way, maybe, the amenities list and the trails list are not competing for the same resources.
Correct.
So you don't have to prioritize an amenity with a trail. It's the trails amongst themselves who prioritize the amenities, and that's why they're separate. They don't compete.
And then.
And with, sorry,
Well, the other thing to remember is, next year, we're gonna make an attempt to work in conjunction with OSAC to do a joint 5-year trails plan. So if our 5-year trails plan is integrated with our amenities list, there's no longer that compatibility with OSAC. We can't really compare trails lists if our trails list is mashed together with our
I think
amenities.
that, to me, the benefit of having them
Yeah.
separate is they're not competing resources.
Right, yeah, I was just trying to think if they're all, just
No,
a
I agree with that.
checklist.
Yeah.
Go down the checklist, and I
Do
agree with
this
that,
or
those are the recommendations.
there has been interest with OSAC as well, I believe, and Patricia can speak to it, as well as from some board members, is the layout and is the way that current 5-year trails plan, does that make sense? It seems to be, the feedback that I've heard over the last 2 years is you really focus on kind of maybe 1 year and then you kind of throw a bunch of stuff at the bottom. We were trying to figure out how to get community input. We were trying to integrate the two lists. So does it make sense to try to treat the trails plan more like the amenities list, where you have, it's just, you've got one and it works its way down, and then there's some description to it, but I think, if I remember from this group you could have then a PROSTAC column that's ranked, an OSAC column, and then you could go to a community event or do some kind of survey, and then have a community column. And then the most continuity between the recommendations then informs the budget process.
Well, and even within our own group,
Yeah.
we could rank it, and that's how we did the
Yeah.
amenities list, reshuffle.
And then really quickly going back to field scheduling, in February of this past year, the committee voted at a 5-3 vote. The committee would like to recommend the board consider allowing town staff the ability to schedule up to 6 hours per week at Kufner Field for T-ball specific activities for the months of April through June as a trial period to be reviewed at the conclusion of the trial. So that again would be another issue. I don't know if it's specifically a work plan, as long as we remember to do it, or you guys can choose to memorialize it as well.
Just trying to all pieces.
Yeah, I would, of course, they got rained out most of their season, didn't they?
Well, they
So
did.
we
Only
don't-
2 weeks.
we don't have a lot of,
I saw them out there a few times.
All right, anyone else?
Just one final question. What qualifies something as a work plan versus tasks that we want to do? What is the difference between the two?
I look at it as these are the tasks we do, or
So,
plan
like-
to do. And some of them are necessities and some of them are wants. So, some things like the conductor review of the recreation facility usage and fees. We're wanting to do that, we've discussed it this year, so we're adding it. Other things are like the trails plan, the amenity list, the weed and pest management, the budget stuff. I mean, those are givens, those roll over, we have to do those every year. But yes, I would say if there's something we want to do, then we add this.
Well, and that's where, to me, that ongoing down there, that reviewing the town center park parcels, that's something I want to partake in and put input in, and I can tell from the previous discussion on
You're talking
on
about the
that
town
Creek
center.
crossing, it seems like, we want to make sure that certain things don't fall off, and make sure, to me, it comes into all of town center that, we're reviewing the parcels, but at some point, I'd really like to understand the connectivity of the bike paths and other trails and amenities that are all interlinked. And, is it just roadway access, or is there a path at any point? And I know it started getting into that buffer zone on the southern side, and how the trails tie in there, all those things.
So we can certainly add to that second item, the continue the town center park parcel town concept plan. We can add in there, trail
connectivity or
path
something like that.
Connectivity. Because I mean, and those are things that if you're at the public events and at the tent and people are asking questions, those are also things that all the people want to know about how they can interact with that space, how they can get there, how they can get across Louisville. You know, it's the interconnectivity that is key for a lot of people.
If this is what the board approves and says that we can work on, and if it's not on here, then we have to go to them and get
They can
something.
say, I don't even want you dealing with that.
Mhm.
But this is the guiding document that will govern what we decide.
What we work
to do.
on, right.
But they got a little bit more stringent earlier this year of telling the committees that they want us to stick to our work plans.
So like discussion there the other day where you came in and wanted to talk to us about the pool, right? So was that on the work plan?
No, but she's public and she can talk about anything that she wants. We can have any discussion. that we
Yeah,
want.
okay.
It's on our work.
But actually,
Well, no, that was
we do have the aquatic needs.
The Aquatic Center, yeah.
Aquatic needs is right.
So
It's bullet for two and ongoing.
that is in a roundabout way.
Okay.
Because we kind of always have that on our.
The committee's had some different philosophies over the year too. I mean, some years that work plan's been 4 pages of stuff that never even got completed. And then it kind of slimmed back to what are the big picture items that we want the board to be aware of, or the committee wants the board to be aware of. So it is, as Peter mentioned, it got a little more stringent this past year where the committees, or where the board said, hey, if it's a big picture item and you think the board's gonna hear about it, we want you to come and ask us if we're in alignment that you guys work on it.
Okay.
But then, 2-3 years ago, I mean, there was so much stuff on the work plan and, a quarter of it would get completed, it felt like.
So do we need to add then this thing that we talked about, the Coal Creek Crossing Trail, that if we raise this as an issue and they say go through with it and it's not in the work plan, do we need to add that to the work plan?
Well, I mean, we're gonna go with them on Monday with that, and so if they do want us to look at it, we're actually hopefully gonna look at it next month.
Okay.
Of this, so this year.
So this will be one of those things where we add to the current work plan.
We're asking it to be added to this year's work plan, essentially.
Work plans need to go before the board per the ordinance, I believe, by February.
Yeah.
So leadership elections, so, and Ron mentioned it, I can't remember if it was this group or if it was another. Boy, we had a list and a bunch of stuff came off the list and a bunch of stuff got added on. So, if there's a lot of discussion about Coal Creek Crossing, the board's really wanting some feedback, it may make sense between now and February before the board really gets their teeth into it to add it.
So, I mean, hopefully we can finalize this tonight, but like Patrick says, we basically have another, 2 months, that we could always add it next month. We could go back and say, we want to add it to the 2016 work plan. But right now, I think our goal is to get it on the 2015 work plan and address it more immediately than next year.
One more I forgot. I apologize.
No, you're on
I'm just
roll.
trying to put my head around all this. I believe that when we talked about this before, some other times, that so in item number 2 for the fourth quarter, the initiate naming process for the school parcel park, I thought it was brought up that none of the parks really have official names. It's just what people have always called them, right? And you can't go and look up Purple Park anywhere or found, or where do these, and so it was I thought somebody had brought up, is that, do we do a naming of all the parks or recommend that versus just the school parcel? Or, I know I get confused all the time and say it's at this park. I'm like, well, where's that park? I try to Google it, I look it up, and I can never find anything about that park name, and I have to go ask somebody who's been here a long time. So, is it just I guess my question is do we want to do for just school parcel, or is there anything that really for all parks? And I'm not saying change the name, I'm saying maybe do initiative try to make them official, or whatever they are. I don't know. But if you're gonna do one, why not all?
It takes a long time.
Yeah, it's a little bit more involved than you might think, because it's a public outreach thing. You go, we usually go to the schools to get, try to get kids to generate ideas. We,
But if you're
to put out to anyone in town to submit ideas, and then those are reviewed with the historic commission, they're reviewed with the other committees for input.
I guess my question is more about, if you're already going through that process with one, how much more extra work is it to add on other ones when they're already looking at it and they're coming up with names or evaluating it, and then doing it all, multiple at the same time versus having to repeat the process later on if they so choose to do?
And there is a mix of park names. Purple Park is one of the few that is a large park that isn't officially named.
If we got the pavilion, then maybe you could.
Right, no, you're right.
I wouldn't want to change it, get lost.
Yeah, I mean, I.
Is Founders Park officially?
Yes.
Yeah.
Founders officially named,
Founders is
Autry
officially
officially named.
I knew Autry was.
Community, is that
Communities
officially named?
officially named, and believe it or not, the big stone monument wall off of Pitkin does have Purple Park.
Oh, it does?
It does.
It does say?
What about
Yeah.
the fire, what is it, fire station?
Fire
Park?
station's been
All
informal,
the
pirates
little-
informal.
All the little
Park,
ones, all of the little ones don't
Where is
have-
fire station?
It's on the fire station.
It's on
It's on the
the
ridge.
north side of the homes of Torrey's Peak. Just on the other side of, you're gonna have the school parcel
The school
park,
parcel, the
Torrey's
house.
Peak houses, fire station park, they're really close. But they're, it's a.
I know exactly, I know where it is, I know.
It's
I know.
cons-
So if you
Consider
do
the
a
top
Google
line.
search, Patrick, on Purple Park, do you find anything?
I
You
don't
find
believe
all
it comes,
kinds
I
of
don't believe it
things.
comes, yeah, I don't think it comes up on a map.
Yeah.
But if you do Founders Park, it does.
Yeah, well, I mean, and the only reason I'd say that, when I first moved to this community, I didn't know where any of the parks were, and there weren't any big monuments. So I can remember going to the computer and looking for Purple Park, and it didn't show up, so I didn't know whether it now did.
Yeah.
And so it seems like we ought to at least do something to make those names official, so that, I mean, like when those people were coming to the golf disc tournament, it was at Purple Park in Superior. They don't know where that is.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a function of Google, because, I mean, people seem to find it. I don't know if that's just because, maybe we need to do better at.
Signage.
Well, I just don't know
Yeah.
whether it
'Cause
is
it's
something
got-
that you would
Oh,
find.
yeah, or if the town where they put like cross streets for
Yeah,
park.
I mean, I know when you look up community park, it tells you you're in Broomfield.
Yeah, so that's what it seems to me.
Founders sometimes will tell you you're
We
in
should get
Louisville.
those things fixed.
Well, that's an overall Google problem.
Right, so I don't know.
It's a-
We live
It's a
in Louisville,
mailbox.
according
Yeah.
to Google, for most addresses, if you Google it, it comes up as Louisville. But,
They all do, post office.
yeah, like Fire Station Park, I've heard people think it's called Red Park. Because they just think, well, we have a purple park and that one has a red roof, so that one's, I'm like.
Red Park.
So, I have another question though, second quarter, number 4, finalized budget recommendations, trails including amenities, playgrounds. And in that one, is that where we tie in the shade structure and the shade structures that we recommended this year that are being installed, is that gonna be a review process in that item? Just to make sure that there's a follow-up on, are those working? Is it something that's, wants to be installed in other locations, all those type of things?
Well, yes, so that's part of the $35,000 in the budget that's being
And that's-
assigned to playground revitalization, so it's part of the budget discussion.
Okay. Just wanna make sure we follow up on that as well.
So is it an unveiling after those things get put out, or they just get put out and you go quietly into the night and somebody notices they're there?
What do you mean, like the shelters?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
stuff that was just approved to be
Just
installed,
gets
they just show up
They're
and get
just
it.
gonna appear, basically.
I think, I mean, we could do like, put it in the newsletter. I think other than parks, I don't know that we've done a lot of big,
Well, yeah, it's not like when
We-
they put in.
we
the-
can, though.
When they put in the
Trust
disabled
me,
swing, it's not like that was.
right, but we absolutely could. I mean,
had
that,
kids and you look at
it's
them,
easy
My
enough.
wife gets her hair done, she'll come up to me and say, don't you like my hair? Oh, yes, it's nice, I didn't realize you had it done, but, these benches are kind of the same way. Oh, aren't they always there? No, they're new.
The new company, can't you see?
Yeah.
All right, anyway.
Yeah, I don't know that I would have like a ribbon cutting ceremony.
Well, not a ribbon cutting, but.
It could go in
just
the newsletter.
let
Yeah, it
people
should go
have-
in the newsletter.
Mhm.
Right. So I will add a first quarter item to evaluate the programming of Kufner Field. A second quarter item to discuss booth planning for the year. And we'll pretty much address that in April. We'll probably address Arbor Day before that separately, but we'll address it in April so that we get a head start on 4th of July. Chili Fest. But I don't think we want to do all of it in the first quarter because we're going to be too busy with everything else. So we'll add the Arbor Day one maybe like in March or something to get ahead
That'd
of
be better
it.
than ongoing, just monitor upcoming events to see
Yeah,
what
there you go.
Well, we'll continue to do that, I think, as part of the update process, but we can add it as a work plan item just so that we are a little bit more conscious of it, I think, this year. And then I will add to the town center, part of the town center item to add trail connectivity issues, so we'll discuss that. But otherwise, I think, short of possibly having add Coal Creek Crossing to this at a later date, I think we should finalize it tonight, rather than bring it up next month. So it's everyone, do we want to have a vote on that to finalize? So does someone want to make a motion to accept the 2016 work plan as presented this evening?
With changes.
With changes. Yes.
I'll move.
So Lindsay, motion, anyone second? All right, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? So Patricia, since you're here, just so you know, Jim Payne was here at the beginning of the meeting to give us some of his recollection of the discussion of the Coal Creek Crossing Trail, since he was the chair at the time in 2012 when it was last discussed. So we did bump that item up on the agenda. So what we've decided is that we do wish to go to the board, and we'll try to go to the board on Monday night when they have a meeting, to ask their permission to further discuss the trail alignment in Coal Creek Crossing as it's presented currently in the FDP. So we didn't make any decision, but the discussion is basically going to be, should it be there? And namely the east-west connection that goes from, goes along the southern portion of the open space property and connects into original town. So should it be there? And if it does stay in there, should the alignment be changed? One idea was, should it actually just be on the northern end of the open space right behind the development rather than sitting out there in the middle of the open space? So, but because it's, potentially a change to an FDP and it's not on our work plan, we felt that we need to go to the board to ask them whether or not they want us to do it.
Great, I'll actually be at Monday's board meeting as well, so.
Did you guys discuss it on Monday night?
Sandy Pennington brought it up to us. We weren't aware that there had been a change. I wasn't at the previous board meeting, that it seems to be different than what it was originally sort of thought that it was going to be. So that was one of the reasons I was coming tonight, but I was double booked because El Dorado's PTO was tonight as well. So I didn't get your message till I actually got here that said, oh, we're moving it up, but I would have missed it anyway. So
Yeah, and just so you, the really quick history on it is, it's been on the development plan since the development was originally proposed. It's just that it's not believed that it was specifically discussed by at least PROSTAC, but we're guessing by OSAC either.
No, we didn't discuss it.
Because there might have been some confusion as to whether that trail was the trail, the existing county trail. You know, maybe there was some confusion as what was shown on the plan was not actually a new trail, it was an existing trail. We'll never know. I mean, that history will have gobbled that up, I guess. But that's what we'll raise to the board if we have some concerns that even though this was shown on the plans, it was not properly discussed. We have concerns we'd like to raise.
I could shoot, I'll email you the images that we looked at tonight too, that way you have them. And I'm at Monday night's meeting too, so I can get you up to speed.
All right, so agenda item 5, the recreation program update. So Patrick can go through that with us, and then I guess when he's done, we can discuss a little bit more about whether or not we want to get more involved on the work.
You don't have to say about the program.
For next year, the program.
Though I am going to talk about I'm going to briefly talk about the open space program. So. Oh, yep, sorry.
Patrick was hiding over there in the dark.
So this was a new item for this year. I actually think originally requested by Sandy, maybe is to get the committee maybe a little bit more at least aware of programming and just get you guys up to speed. It sounds like you guys probably face a lot of questions when you're out in the public about what we do, what we don't do, and figuring out ways to communicate better and have you guys in the process seems to make sense. So I think this will be a little bit of a back and forth because I'm not exactly sure what we want, what you guys are wanting from me, but I thought the best place to start for the programs is just to kind of go over generally what we offer. We could talk a little bit about numbers, we could talk a little bit about events, and then we can kind of just feel it out. If you guys are having ideas or you're thinking that you guys want to see something different from staff or you just have general questions, I think we can kind of get right into it. But this past year, we offered everything from a series of what we've been calling open space education classes, which is actually funded out of the open space fund. There's a $10,000 allocation that OSAC has recommended for several years now to provide open space education. Prior to me taking this job, that was actually one of my first projects, was getting that rolling, and it's been one of my favorites. We pay a gal named Ashley Delop to do all the beginning bird walk stuff. She helps us coordinate the Jeff and Paige concerts. We did a Living with Coyote.
So that's the coyote
speech.
awareness thing?
Yep.
The star gazing.
Actually, that's a little bit separate.
Oh, that's
yeah.
separate.
So we really kind of started to break them down into outdoor education, and again, funded in a different pot of money. OSAC does have some say-so in those programs, so that's something to think about in this group. They had a focus for that open space fund to provide education, which is kind of in their charter. So it's been really successful. I would say some of our most consistent projects and programs over the last 3 years have been through Ashley. Out of that, we were also able to do the kind of the Living with Coyote updates that we've done. She helped us issue with some language on rattlesnakes. We were having just constant calls about rattlesnakes, specifically by the Key Bank building and down by the South Pool.
Mm-hmm.
So she's a contractor that we can use to help educate the public on that as well. She writes all the curriculum. She's obligated to attend 2 of the town events and provide, I think we specify 6 education programs. It's been really successful. We've asked her to come back next year and evolve even further. So separate from that, internally the Parks and Rec staff had been working a while on just how can you do programming in a town that doesn't have a rec center, but you've got these amazing outdoor amenities. So through kind of a brainstorming session, we began offering beginner and intermediate fly fishing classes, which have been really successful. We tried stargazing, which were really successful. And we also did tree climbing, which was really successful. And those are programs that we work with the contractor, we kind of do the internal organization, and then we get a percentage of the registration fees. A little bit different than outdoor education in that that's funded from open space, so those tend to be free programs. But those are what we would call kind of just park and rec programs that we offer on an ongoing basis, and we'll plan to offer them year after year. We offer slacklining in Founders Park, both clinics and camps. They tend to be pretty successful, anywhere between 10 and 15 kids. We also offer ultimate disc, which has really grown. This is the third year that we've done it. We do camps during the summer. We started with 11 kids, and we were around 30 or 40 this past year. That's something that we've been really proud of. The town's and department's biggest recreation programs are when we host the Marcelo Balboa soccer camps. He does 4 weeks of camp for us. It's actually our largest revenue generating program. It's a great program. It takes a ton of work to coordinate. We have a full-time person during those weeks that just works on those camps with Marcelo. But we offer 4 weeks, and for the most part, participants will sign up for multiple weeks, and we allow them the flexibility to sign up in any combination that they want. You could take all 4, you could take 1 and 3, whatever. It's been around, it predates me, but it's probably about 60% of the overall revenue the town brings in for programming is through Marcelo Balboa soccer camp.
Is that continuing?
It is.
We just got an email, he's leaving trouble, so.
Right, yeah.
So I didn't know how much he's leaving or whatever.
Yeah, the last I chatted with him a couple weeks ago, we were still on board to do it. I know some of the changes with Treble, and then I know he's still coaching at the high school.
Personally, it was a lot better before.
Yep.
Much better, because she was.
The town is, we've now dedicated a staff person to manage it.
Really well done the first few years.
And the numbers,
That was like 10 years ago.
and the numbers have gotten, we were around 300 campers this year, and when you have Williams Field and a baseball field, and as staff, we always get caught in this hard place of saying, hey, registration's done, we're full, and let's sneak one more in, and those are things that we go with each contractor, and before you know it, there's an additional 10 kids. And this past year, we had teams that wanted to sign up, so we've decided to dedicate a full-time staff person just to help babysit that program while it's going on, because it's just got a life of its own. It's massive. We added foam dart frenzy this year, which was awesome. I kind of put a task out to staff to come up with ways to engage tweens and early teens, because it's that's kind of the magic question for all parks and rec departments across the entire country is, what do you do with kids who want to participate in something but don't want to participate in something organized? How do you provide an opportunity that has loose organization but it feels like it doesn't? And Foam Dart Frenzy was something that kind of came across our radar, and we thought we would give it a try. We were originally going to do it independent, but thought our chances of making it successful would be better if we partnered with the HOA. So we just sent an email to the HOA and said, hey, what do you guys think? And it took off. I think we were 106, 107 kids overall participated.
Our kids really like that.
Yeah, and we through our class evaluations, we've learned some things. It's tough. I think we were pretty hands off. We wanted it to feel a little free flowing, and some people really loved it, and some people absolutely hated it. In terms of, I want to show up at this time. I wanted my kid to play darts for 20 minutes. I wanted to come back and get my kid. So I think as we continue to offer it and try it in different formats, we'll evolve it. Something that we're throwing around right now is some kind of play on maybe how could you, we've played around with surviving Superior, where you can maybe do tree climbing, fly fishing, outdoor education, and then maybe we bring in state parks to do archery.
But you were gonna do survival skills.
Build a campfire.
Urban,
Yeah.
yeah, right, urban.
I'll stay away
Like
from
just,
Yeah.
send them out with a knife and a Colt.
Yeah.
Like
So
rock.
around Superior, you have to
Yeah.
get punches from all the different areas and hit all the way around Superior. And
Yeah,
the
well,
pressure
and
and all.
I'll actually get to that concept
Actually-
about the passport.
Yeah, I was gonna
the
say, I
passport.
went with the parks. Yeah.
So, again,
That's how you do them all.
we're constantly trying to evolve these programs, because it's, you know, we're one of the few places that provides Parks and Rec without an indoor facility. So it's not always easy to provide programming because we don't have a place to put it, and it's too inconsistent to put stuff at the firehouse. It's too expensive in a lot of times to try to get stuff into the schools. So, you know, over the last 3 years, we've really worked to figure out how do you program really innovatively and creatively with what you got, and we need to quit assuming we're gonna have an indoor space. And we've come up with some stuff that I think's been good, and we've had some absolute failures.
Has there been any further discussion on some of the vacant space and being able to utilize it?
What?
The vacant space.
Like
Oh, the
sports.
vacant space.
Well,
I
Vacant.
thought you
Um,
said faking space.
so
I said, what
vacant
faking
large-
space?
So
Vacant.
one thing to add here is with the completion of Boulder Valley Ice in the next, whatever, 6 months or whatever it is, we need to remember there is gonna be a community room in there that's controlled by the town. So they might have some opportunities to do indoor, some type of indoor programming.
Between 5 AM and 6 AM?
Currently,
You're right, it's gonna be
Well,
up
that's
against
times.
everything else.
so
No, because it's our room, right? We
That's
control it. Yeah.
it would be, I'm not gonna lie, it would be a game changer for the department. The department's been around since, what, 2003? And to not have, to have a rec department and not have recreational programmable space it's just a challenge. It's a challenge we all enjoy across the street, but it would be awesome to offer a consistent art class, or it'd be awesome to start to dabble, you know. I've always had this vision of, could you in the summer have a camp where on Monday, kids come in and maybe they're interested in theater, right? And you get your general script, and you have kids that build the set, and you have kids that kind of want to be the chorus kids, and you have kids that kind of want to be the lead kids. And in a week or a week and a half, you have some kind of performance. But you need indoor space for stuff like that. We tried for years to do art classes, but not having a consistent location and even space, they peter out. So it would be a game changer for the department, for sure. We offer the full range of aquatics, everything from parent taught to junior lifeguard. We also dabbled in doing beginner scuba lessons this year, which actually went really, really well. We've talked to groups about paddleboard yoga, but we've got some space issues. We've worked with, we've communicated several times with the Horizons or Bell Flatirons about using their water space. So I would say right now, paddleboard and tri training are the most consistent we get. But we run into issues at North Pool with just the size. So scuba went really, really well. The town's swim lesson program sells out for the most part every year. We have,
Within days.
yeah, and we're priced still at $35, which is well below
Well,
market
that should
value.
be, and that's one of the things I was gonna
That's
mention.
one of the things
really
that needs
should
to be in
added.
that
Yeah.
fee structure.
We have a really, really kind of cool succession of a lot of the kids that are our guards now started with town swim lessons. They move on to the Flyers. They work our front desk. They become lifeguards. They become managers. So the kids that are in our junior lifeguard program now, we fully anticipate keeping around as lifeguards. It's something that Brian on our staff actually spends a lot of time on, is you know, there's not a lot of places for kids to get summer jobs around here. This is one of them. So Brian's worked really hard on perfecting kind of that lifeguarding swim lesson process, and we sell out all the time. We added a volunteer coordinator this year. We had 5 dedicated volunteer projects plus all the town events. We did 3 Eagle Scout projects, which tend to be mostly staff coordinated. We were really, really happy with the way that the volunteer projects are going. In terms of town events, you guys know we do everything: Arbor Day, 4th of July, Chili Fest, National Day of Service, Volunteer Appreciation Dinner, and then we added the Count the Lights event. And I don't know if you guys saw it last year, but we were trying to come up with some creative ways to draw attention to the town's historic fire truck. We had a contact with the city of North Glen, who for years came up with the idea of you just slam a ton of lights on it and you have kids come out and guess the number of lights. And we asked, hey, do you guys find if we borrow the idea? It took off. The board asked us to add a Christmas tree in Dasty Park and do a tree lighting with it. That's all done internally with the staff across the street. So without kind of getting into it too much, I won't bore you guys too much more. We're always between 2,000 and 3,000 participants on activities that are hosted by the town. We do have a contract with the YMCA to provide youth sports. It's been failing, I'll say, over the years. It hasn't been great. The town also has a contract with YMCA to provide tennis, and tennis has been absolutely amazing. A lot of that's due to the instructor, a guy named Ted Murray. So, for a small department without an indoor facility, we like to think we accomplish a lot. We have some really good successes, and we swing and miss as well. We're still not capturing the fitness aspect of it. We've kind of allowed the independent fitness providers to rent Williams Field or come and use Williams Field. I would say the biggest challenge we run into with that is every fitness trainer that we come in contact with wants a guaranteed amount of money. And that's just not how Parks and Recreation typically works. You know, you get a lot of these guys say, yeah, I'll come and offer a class for you. And we say, well, yeah, well, you know, what are your fees? Well, I charge $200 per person. Well, that's not gonna fly. You know, you can't use our facility for next to nothing, make money for your business, and walk away with it. You know, we look for really equitable partnerships, and that's hard to pull off in the fitness industry without an indoor space. And we haven't done it. We haven't figured out a good way to figure it, you know. So we should talk. There you go. Love it. Yoga in the park is something that we've done. Yeah, right. Yoga in the park for several years was great. It was a drop-in activity. And then, you know, the instructor, she you know, started a family and didn't have the time. We were trying to find somebody, again, who was willing to be part of the community. It wasn't just about them bringing their yoga studio to Superior and making money. It was integrating in. I loved it. It was a really successful program for 2 years.
Somebody could do it for you.
I love it. I love it.
Well, I think that's, I mean, just to say, part of the reason I asked that we do this is, eventually, all the parks in this community are gonna be built. And, you know, we might run out of things to do. So can we help with ideas for programming and things like it? Several years ago, we did a program assessment of, you know, what are we doing and what would people like to see us do. And so, you know, what I'd like to have you do is tell us on a quarterly basis what programs are upcoming, what programs would we like to do, and yet we're struggling to find somebody to do them. So for like the yoga, my next door neighbor is a yoga instructor. And I think he would probably, if he could work it, because he also teaches and he works with the CU football team and stuff. But I think because he's very involved in the community, he might be willing to do it. So that's where I was like, I think it would be great if we had a quarterly update on what are the programs that are coming up for the month. How are we communicating them? Because the other thing that concerns me is that the message isn't getting out enough about some of the things that, I know we send out these publications, but what tends to happen is 3 days before we have bird watching, we send out a notice. And I feel like we need to do a better job of communicating the efforts more in advance. And I know, I was told by Kirsten Germundy that she's been hired by the city to do some contract marketing and communications, and, can she come in even and start coming to our meetings and communicating, these are the things we're doing.
Right. And
those kinds of
and
things.
I'm glad you brought that up, because it's definitely something. How to communicate it out is something that everybody struggles with. And it's funny, because what we've learned over this past summer is the e-newsletter. It's the most effective way to get it out. And to your point about Birdwalk, which for whatever reason this one comes up a lot. The Birdwalk had been advertised 3 newsletters prior. It was in the mail home piece, and it was sent on the CAC. And what we had kind of adopted after we had a marketing person come in, we sent staff to a bunch of trainings, is you kind of come up with this succession planning. Well, what we learned this year is the e-blast is all anybody cared about. But the problem with the e-blast is there's 2,000, between 50, actually I think we're a little bit lower now, I think we're lower than 2,000 people subscribe to the town's e-blasts. So we need to figure out what is the most effective way to communicate that out. The CAC is now below.
Well, that's because people like me have dropped off the
Right.
CFC because I'm so sick of having 14 emails come across about where do I take my leaves? You
Yeah.
know, and fortunately, Peter's also on there, so
That was
he
today's
usually
topic.
jumps
Yeah,
in
that's
right.
and tries to nips a lot of it in the butt. But I couldn't stand it anymore.
Right.
Well, it's not a
So,
digest,
you know,
you can get it in the
and you
digest.
can't go back and get past information. So for me, I was like, can we have some sort of a every other week blast that goes out from the recreation department that just, or once a
Right.
month, that talks about the things that are coming out
There's gotta be
from
a
you
way to
and
do
from OSAC
A little bit
and,
of a blast of a calendar with just bullet point dates, because I only get so far down that.
well, then the
letter before I
newsletter
can
comes
say,
out
yeah, I made
and
it to about halfway.
I read it and then
gotta go to my next meeting.
you know,
Right.
I delete it out of my email, so I don't see it
It was something
anymore.
like TLDC, too long, or TLDR,
Too
too
long
long didn't
read.
read, right?
Yep. And it is, you know, and
And
again, another challenge of being in the department is
Go to the next email.
you've got a decent sized community and a very small percentage that actually read your publications. One of the things the town gets knocked on most, and some of the reason why we stopped doing what we were calling the pros newsletter, is we would send them and the number of people that were unsubscribing,
We increased.
it's huge.
Well, I mean, I guess the thing from, you know, I get a lot of junk mail and I unsubscribe, but it's stuff that I don't care about. So why would I not want to get more messages from the Parks and Rec Department? You know, if everybody in the community doesn't get it, that's fine, but there are people who are interested.
Mhm.
I just feel like, you know, the newsletter comes once a month, there's a bunch of crap in there I don't want to read. But I do want to know what's going on in Parks and Rec. And I think there's a lot of people who would be interested in, you know, so, I mean, or maybe we have Kirsten come and talk to us about what her strategies might be for how do we communicate more widely what's going on. in
I
Parks and
wonder
Rec.
if you don't have a list for the town monthly newsletter and a separate email list for, you know, like the programming type
Yeah,
stuff.
what kind of
'Cause
activities?
that way is if you send out like a monthly, you know, pros newsletter, and someone unsubscribes from that, well, at least they're not unsubscribing from the entire town list.
Mhm.
They're only unsubscribing from the pros newsletter, they're not unsubscribing from the town. So, because if that was the concern, was that they're unsubscribing from the towns and, you know, core
Right,
list.
the town currently doesn't have a mechanism to do both. I
I
mean,
think
no.
that's easy.
No.
Holy crud balls.
Well, I used to do this for a
Welcome
living as
to
a
the new
publicist. It's
millennium.
easy to have separate newsletter lists.
Again, you're in,
This is
remember, you're in a
government.
government structure. The very small population of people who are currently reading it have self-selected and do it. So you have, I'm not at all disagreeing and wish a lot of these things would be as easy and as turnkey. Our Facebook page is absolutely blown up. Kirsten was brought on town to do more big picture eco-devo stuff.
Well,
And is
she's
on.
my next door neighbor, and that's not what she told me.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and we've met with her several times, and the town is paying for help in that respect. So, I hear you. We should absolutely, right now, with the current website, you can self-select to get information. We've got a $12,000 marketing budget that includes $8,000 worth of postage. So, I mean, this, to Daryl's point, you know, you're in a.
Could we spend some of that on
$4,000
more regular
a year.
emails coming out? I mean, I just think people would pay more attention.
Yeah.
Literally, that piece of paper comes in my office and I look at it and I go, okay, fine. But an
Good
email coming
recycling
in.
program.
So, can I just kind of bring this a little bit back? Part of the discussion is what I'm trying to get out of it is, you know, PROSTAC is Parch, Rec, Open Space, Trail,
Mhm.
Divided, right? But I guess from all the meetings I've been in, and maybe I'm not understanding it right, it's not really, at what part is it really is it any part Parks and Rec Advisory Committee? Because the first part of the name is, you know, Parks, Rec Advisory
Mhm.
Committee, not park as in building a park, maintaining the park, but Parks and Rec. Is there any part of the charter that says that we advise Parks and Recs also for some of these things? You know, which is what you were getting at earlier. Is it really the purview of the advisory committee? Is it literally just, you know, because none of these things are on the work plan either,
Mhm.
right? To evaluate the current Parks and Rec offerings or to offer feedback or advice. It's everything's all in line with development of parks, maintaining of parks, development of trails, maintaining of trails, not usage of any of this type of stuff.
And
I'm just trying to understand.
I'm very interested, you even said that the YMCA is contracted to run some of these programs, and you said they're failing.
Mhm.
And, you know, I'm a parent of kids that have been in the programs, and I guess I have some insight of why I've left the program.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, for
Well,
various
that's-
reasons, you
That's
know,
part of what
or
I
kept in
believe
some of them.
we're trying to, I mean, my thing, I'm not in competition with Patrick. What I'm trying to
Right.
do is help Patrick accomplish the things that he wants to accomplish, and that sometimes, because he's in town government, it's very hard to do. But if you push up from the bottom, sometimes things can be accomplished. So that's why I've been saying, okay, let's help him as much as we can with the recreation part. Don't tell him what to do, but let's be an additional
Advice.
resource to him.
Advisory.
And I've asked the
Mhm.
trustees, you know, a number of them, you know, we always talk about parks, we always talk, is it outside of the purview for us to help, give guidance and help with the recreation planning? And that's where I've gotten into the future stuff, and they said, absolutely, that is within your purview to make recommendations and help Patrick. You know, he's still a staff person, he's gonna make it happen, and we're gonna tell him whether he can.
Obviously, I'm with them.
But, you know, that would be,
We
I
can add
mean,
that.
several years ago, part of the work plan was to do a recreation program assessment. And we spent a
Mhm.
lot of time on it. We worked very hard on it. And we didn't have the world's greatest contractor helping us. But, you know, I believe it's something that we should be doing every 2 to 3 years and asking the community. Because that's where we started getting a lot of the responses about adult programming. It's
Mhm.
really hard for them to do adult programming because we don't have a facility.
So,
But I still think there's things we could do on the
but from a
outdoors.
programming aspect, we should analyze all the programs that are being offered and how they're performing, not utilization of the actual field
Oh,
and do we
yeah.
have enough?
Yeah.
Because that's where, you know, we've gotten into that of the baseball and, you know, never having enough fields to push it
I will say, when I first started with the town, I don't know that there was a lot of interest from the committee to deal with the programmatic piece, and I think there was a lot of hesitation on kind of what Sandy touched on is do you then start to kind of does the committee start to micromanage staff? And I think as long as there's kind of the clear lines they're drawn, it makes absolute sense. And I think something that we've always asked for is there's normally a method to the madness, you know, and kind of going back to having the neighbor that wants to do yoga, the biggest roadblock that we run into, per the government standard, he also has to have $1 million of general liability insurance. And those,
Yeah, I have no idea.
right, so those,
I assume he does.
but the more education that we get out there, the better. The fact that you guys probably didn't know that there's only 2,000 people who have self-selected to receive town information, and that number dwindles is something that we've been trying to throw out there quite a bit, because I don't know that the town communicates the best.
This is the HOA problem too.
Yeah.
HOA relies pretty much 100% on email, again, monthly newsletter type deal. But if you're not on the email list,
Right.
then you feel like you're not being contacted. But I mean, it's just not, it's not something that has a lot of other avenues.
Yeah.
I mean, they've started to do like an events Facebook page. They've started to do, try to do some other outreach things, but it's just not, doesn't really exist.
So 2 years ago, we started asking, when you signed up for a class, how did you hear about the class? And the two biggest responses were the individual mail home piece and word of mouth. And then we've really, like a lot of governments, we were super late to the Facebook world because of all the regulations that take place. And so we're there, and you can already start to see that trending away. We talked a lot about, you're now starting to see local governments get into the YouTube world. But again, there's a separate set of regulations for that. I don't remember, speaking of the CAC, it popped up on the CAC, it was either El Dorado or one of the schools had a project that linked to a YouTube video, but the banner ad that was on the YouTube page was completely inappropriate. Everybody shut it down, right? So school, you automatically said, we're not gonna do anything on YouTube because you can't control the banner ad that goes with it. And those are things, unfortunately, that we have to deal with, because you're in a place where you just can't please all the people all the time. But I think the more, really, for me, the more the merrier.
I'd just like to see us get quarterly reports, maybe, of what's coming up in the next quarter, and,
Yep.
you know, I just think that would be good.
If you look at even tonight's agenda, where Patrick's going to make more of an effort to
Yeah.
give us updates on what programming is coming up.
Look at that.
And then I won't keep you guys too much longer on the program stuff, because I can chat about it.
I have a question though, to go back to more event stuff, like Corbett, I think was the one that asked about the disco. I mean, we didn't hear anything about that. I think it even caught a lot of the trustees, like, didn't really know about it. But, I mean, how does that really come about? I mean,
You just get a group that comes to the town and says, we're willing to pay you,
No, we want it next month.
and we want it next month, and we say, it's not gonna happen, they say, we'll pay you a little more, and then eventually, and that's what happened with Disc Golf, is, they had a location that kind of fell through, guy lived in Louisville, they loved Purple Park, we threw out a number, and, I mean, we said you had to email, you had to send a letter home to all the surrounding residents, they had to buy the porta potties, and they were like, yeah, we'll do it, and it ended up being a huge success. We try to stick to, Louisville's going through the same thing. Eastern Boulder County, because our permitting restrictions are a whole lot less than Boulder County, Erie, Lafayette, Louisville, and Superior, we get hit constantly with groups that want to run races, that want to do, the Walk for Life things that go 24 hours a day. We get constant requests to do permitting for Coal Creek, and we say we'll normally entertain about one outside community event a quarter, because it starts to become a drain on the town, and there are huge drains on staff resources. disc golf, and you guys could kind of pass this around because it ended up becoming a real collaborative effort. These guys were a great group. They gave of themselves like you would want for any race promoter. We have the stocking run coming up. Darren with Racing Underground, phenomenal. If every race director would treat us with that kind of respect and work his butt off the way that these guys are supposed to, we'd have much more going on in terms, but I get probably a request every 2 months to have a cyclocross race. We turn down 3 to 4 race permits every year because we're really cognizant of closing town streets. So that's how these tend to come about. The disc golf I'd like to really work to keep around, and you guys, I just printed some of the marketing stuff that we all worked on. But that's, you know, we had a group come in this past summer that wanted to run their own independent movie nights. You know, we had a group that wanted to bring in a petting zoo.
Well, they did do that movie night at the South Pool.
Yeah.
I never saw it actually happen. But
Yeah.
How did that go?
We've had,
Was that part of the flyers, or?
No, it was like a realtor.
It was a realtor who wanted to come in.
Because I saw something.
The Flyers do their dive-in,
Okay,
which is always awesome, and they were doing Jaws this year.
yeah. I could see it from my backyard, but I couldn't see what it was.
Yeah, so I would say a lot of that kind of stuff. We worked on the stocking run with Darren. We wanted another winter activity, and he's a great guy. He had some really great ideas, and again, he wants to be in a partnership. It's not kind of a two-way street. So, and then the other thing I brought, one of the projects we did this year, it needs some tweaks and it needs some loves. We threw it together really late as we came up with the
I like
Passport
that.
Superior.
I like that.
Except
just
for
needs-
nobody knew about it.
Yeah, we
It
had
was
someone
out
come
at
up
the
at
OSAC.
4th of July,
And-
and we had no idea.
And again,
Yeah.
we began advertising it at Arbor Day. So we're missing somehow.
Well, and
I was
it's
there.
a question of where you pick those up at and
And we
how
had-
they get them out.
and-
Because
yeah.
it was at the Colton Loop down there, the trailhead, that there
Yeah.
was I don't even know what it was,
It was
the
National
hawk-
Trails Day.
It was a National
Yeah.
Trails Day, yeah.
And they had
We
the
had all those
raptors and
animals.
The
stuff.
Raptors,
Yeah.
hotel,
And then
Yeah.
the only other place we had them, again, not really having a facility, we had them at the pools and we had them here. It's something I think we'll keep around.
But I saw a lot of people pick them up when we were at booths.
I said, you can move my boots, right?
Yeah, so it's like, when do you distribute that and what's the timeline to utilize
Yeah.
it, you know?
And I think we learned a lot. The biggest thing we learned is our signs were stolen twice this year, so we spent a lot of money replacing signs. But this is something, again, we kind of worked to design in-house. It was a reasonable cost.
I thought it was a
worked out-
great idea,
it
just
worked
when I found
really
out
well.
about it, it was like the weekend that it was all gone.
finalizing.
Yeah, so, you know, and the other thing, you know, if you wanted, you could send them to some of the HOAs. We could
Right.
put them in a
Well, or
clubhouse.
the schools.
Yeah.
Schools, you cannot send them to
Can't.
schools. No, that has to be approved through the district.
They give us so much crap in the Friday folders
Right.
that's just like related to like fundraising and all kinds of
Yeah,
stuff.
those are all
Those
in-state
are all
You seriously put like
But I
a
wonder if
town
some of
flyer in
our,
there?
like stores, you know, would Pizza Hut put some out, or
Or
something
just-
like
or
that?
put-
Yeah.
You could at least put the sign thing across the
But
street
to
from
me,
school.
these are great because when I lived in Boulder 15 years ago, whatever it was, I still have a map like this that used to be at one of the
Yeah.
parks you could pick up. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's like, it's how I learned all the trails. And even this, I was like, oh, I've never been on that trail. I'm going to check that out.
So, and to kind of go with that, we were approached by Bike Life. We had an article in Bike Life that we worked on as Parks and Rec staff, was great. And then, I'd say 2 years ago, did we have consider
No,
We're,
I don't think so.
right
There's
now,
no-
it's been a policy not to distribute and have things at trailheads due to
It just does
just the
litter and
trash.
stuff,
And,
yeah.
a couple years
That's
ago,
all right.
after having the Parks and Rec budget cut for advertising, we kind of took it into our own hands and we started creating what we refer to as the mail home piece. It's just really quick snippets. And we just kind of make these in the office. Again, town doesn't have a marketing person. It's not something that's been contracted out. You know, Katie on our staff has a bit of a marketing background, but these have actually gone over really, really well. And between this and word of mouth, these are where most of our registrations, where people are saying that they're coming from. And then the other thing we get tons of positive feedback on is the postcards that get sent home. I personally wish there was something that we could do different because they're really expensive, but the feedback that we get, and then we've actually not done them and have gotten more people upset that we hadn't done them. So I'm also all ears on creative ways to distribute it. It's all about getting the word out.
What about, I know sometimes like sometimes there's a lack of links to registration or to dates and certain things online. Because like, I remember I tried to sign up for, I've seen plenty of things for the stocking run, but like even the 4th of July, the fun run, the mile downhill, it's like, I couldn't figure out how to sign up for the thing, and I finally just said,
Yeah.
You know, but I'm like, some of that, it's like, the word's out there, but I don't know how to follow through on it.
I tell you, I actually signed up for the wrong beer fest, Chili Fest, ended up doing the Louisville one and not the Superior one, and I was. But they did give me my money back.
No, but I mean, more than anything, the clarity of the website and knowing how to get to things instead of going through step after step to get to the right thing.
I think you guys are absolutely right, and I think if the town did have a dedicated marketing person, I'll be real honest with you, when we're in the middle of the summer, this is a dream. We just aren't.
Yeah.
It falls to the bottom of the list.
Yeah.
I think the more community support, the better, because clearly word of mouth is what works. So, and support from the HOAs would be fantastic. We've had dialogues in the past with Rock Creek HOA about, hey, would you put some of our information in? We've had conversations with, the individuals that run the 0027. They don't want town information on there. I mean, so that's, town governments always aren't the most exciting things out there. So we'll keep trying though.
We need to work with like Pizza Hut or Domino's, and the flyer on top is a Superior flyer.
Yeah.
And it gets delivered to every house because those things are.
We did start working with Heather in the chamber to do the rooftop drops. And that does seem to work out.
That only gets a portion of
Yeah, it
each
gets a quarter.
of the town each quarter. So it doesn't get everybody, so that is the one downside to those. But it still reaches 10 people.
Yeah, I would love it.
And we put it every year, Chamber puts a whole calendar of events and all of the events, town events in there as well, in the directory. And it's online too.
Like I said, Facebook's slowly evolving.
I'm sure
You saw it and,
Right.
No, I actually think I would have noticed, because this paper is so
The
weird.
paper is
feeling.
very different.
These are my samples. It would have been a different cut of paper.
Okay, because I'm sitting here going, man, if that paper had come across, I
Nope.
would have noticed it.
It's like that watercolor.
But but the fact that it's got a kid with a Frisbee on the front, I can't imagine that I wouldn't have remembered it, so.
So we're
that's
always trying to evolve as a department. I mean, we all have programming backgrounds. That's where I started in youth sports. So I believe in it. It's a super critical part of community building, having good recreational opportunities, and the more support we can get, it's only for good.
So not a work plan item per se, but it'll come up as updates on the agenda, and what's going on. I mean, I think that usually happens, but some things do get missed. Like the tree, I really wish I'd known about the tree climbing thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, we don't normally get any, I mean, we've got these two big things here, the Count the Lights and the Superior Stocking Run, and maybe it was your plan, but we don't know that the bird watching clinics coming up or any of those. And if we
Right.
could just have all those sorts of activity, you know,
Yeah.
even if it was swimming lessons, this period to this period, just so we know they're coming up
Yeah,
and.
well, yeah, this is new, I mean, Patrick and I
Yeah.
just talked
Yeah.
about adding
Yeah.
this, so we'll make sure to continue this and you
Yeah,
see
I
how
think
it
that'd be
goes.
awesome.
And the mayor has requested the same. So I'm providing him a list as well. So we will, now that one's a little bit different, that one will be a little bit more big picture, because originally we were given them the list and it was like, Guppy's 1 starts this day and Guppy 2
Yeah.
starts this
Oh,
day.
yeah, no, that's too much.
I don't think I need that,
Yeah.
but swimming lessons are these
Yeah.
weeks or.
So
Yeah,
absolutely.
Guppies anyway.
So as soon as the pool opens to when the pool closes.
No, stop it, Brad.
It is, it's a sad truth of Parks and Rec departments everywhere. It's,
Well, yeah, just the.
we get going and
Wire
then,
closing to the pool, or
yeah, it's like,
could
hey.
keep us busy.
Well, if word of mouth is the most effective way that we communicate, we got 9 of us in this room and,
Lots of kids.
and I live in a neighborhood with way
Yeah.
too many, with lots of kids. So I'd like to get some
Program-
out in the community.
Program revenue this year was higher than any year that, since I've been here. We're pretty proud of that. Our program numbers have climbed consistently for 2 years. We're really proud about that. Yeah.
We need to get a self-driving Google car with a loudspeaker to just go around town.
Yeah, just put it on that stupid ice
Yeah, there's
cream
a lot
truck that
more.
goes
Yeah.
around in the summertime.
We have learned
Eat that
that,
ice cream.
that businesses and schools and people they're oddly particular about what they want communicated through their business and what they don't. And it's just all kind of part of it. So we're pretty shameless. So we'll throw out just about anything if somebody will listen.
I think my experience, a lot of the stuff how we get involved with attending these events or get other folks involved is my kids will hear about it and they'll want to do it. And then it's like, we invite our friends. We'll ask them, we weren't going to do it. Well, we're going to do it. Okay, we'll do it. Or the other way around, they're signed up and then they call us and say, hey, are you guys going? We're going to go do this thing. We weren't planning it, but okay.
Yeah.
And that's what happens every time.
The school.
I do it all the time.
The school.
I'm asking neighbors if they're doing something, and a lot of times they don't know about it, but at least,
Yeah.
3 or 4 other families know about it because I asked them.
The school has started to put together a guide, and you can pay into it, and then they'll advertise your stuff, and then the school's got a really solid relationship with the YMCA, so there definitely is, if there are perceived conflicts of interest on stuff, they'll tend to separate out, or you can pay to be in their publication, and we have looked at that, because that, to me, seems to make a little bit more sense than some of the other methods that we're doing. And then you're just kind of generally lumped in there with everybody else, but, maybe you get spotted that way.
So the monument that is gonna go at the, shopping
Rock
center
Creek
that's
Village.
down Rock Creek Village, is it gonna have a marquee that we might be able to market, whether they'd work with us and say, hey, sign up for swimming lessons now? Because I thought they said there was gonna be a marquee on there.
Yeah.
And, they can't just say, come to Doug's Day Dial all the time.
Yeah.
Would they
I think that's
explore
their
that?
intention.
That we could communicate
Yeah.
some of our programs. through
We
that
we
too.
were picking around a little bit. The issue we run out with this one, and I'm hoping it's not with that one, is the characters to get them large enough to read as somebody's driving by. You get like 6 letters on there. So we're hoping that the one down at Rock Creek Village.
Well, it's a little bit slower
It's a slower
traffic,
speed, yeah.
you know,
There's a stop
down
light
there.
I don't know where it's going, but
Maybe.
there's a stop light there.
Right as you kind of, so as you're headed east on Colton, turning into like where Williams Field is.
Yeah,
Right
and community
there,
park, it's right there.
So, this is the first time I've ever talked about programming with PROSTAC, so I appreciate it. This is the fun stuff.
Okay.
Thank you.
Update items. Will anyone else have any other questions on the until learning stuff? We can continue to have the updates on the agenda, and then we'll leave it as a little bit more of an open item of discussion. We can discuss it quarterly or whatever it is, just to make sure we're in the loop. And if we have any comments, you know, Patrick will listen to us.
You might not do anything, but he'll listen.
Yeah, he'll listen. All right, so school parcel park changes. The board opened this back up in the work session was it just last Monday?
Yes.
Yeah, it was.
So just last Monday, they opened it up, and they had a few changes, one of which was based on a resident on Opal Lane that showed up. And so, Patrick can just.
Biggest change, Peter referred to it, volleyball court here is gonna adjust here, creating a greater distance with the residents down in this area. This pavilion here, the board had interest in really maximizing its size to get just a lot of seating under there. So this will probably become a rectangular shape, but a good sized pavilion. This will stay probably, you know, the octagonal shape, and then maybe have some kind of pergola type wings on the side to make this more of a
Weddings.
an overlook.
They were
Like a
talking
focal
weddings.
point. Yeah, like
It
it's
was
gonna be like a
weddings.
gazebo-like
Yeah.
structure.
I was laughing.
So
Yeah,
that
my
those
wedding.
are, you know, we're nothing major. This was
Right across from Sandy's.
This was a good move. This is an easy move. Not an issue at all in here to go with an octagon shape. This was an easy change up here. The other request is to make sure we have wildflower areas, which we had kind of envisioned anyway. But we're getting close. My next, we're at 50% design. We'll be at 75% design documents here by December 10th. My goal is to have a RFP out for construction in January and have a contractor selected hopefully by February and get construction going as soon as possible. This is a big project, you know, a $3 million park built in a year it's gonna be awesome. This is gonna be a really amazing park. And I think we're there.
Will this be disruptive to the school at all?
No. I'm sorry, this connectivity goes away. Sorry, this trail.
It goes away.
Yeah. The school is not willing to participate in any kind of funding to help with
So
that
that's the
parking.
community trail.
Yeah.
Because as soon as the
As soon as you
parking
put
goes
parking in there,
in, that'll
kids
be
are
the
gonna-
community trail.
Onto the, right.
I think part of the purpose of this was to.
That's the school's property.
Yeah,
Yeah.
part of
Well,
it is-
so obviously
Well, I
the
know,
chain link
yeah.
fence is still gonna be there, so people will either have to hop the
Yeah.
fence, or you're gonna talk about a gate at that far left where there's the town easement, right?
Down here?
Down right by where the Opal houses are. Wasn't that what got
At
discussed?
the trail
Yeah,
connection
on
over
this
there?
end.
Because that's a trail connection, isn't it?
Yeah, this trail, this is
Far
kind of, so,
left on the west side.
this social trail exists already.
But right there, wasn't that the discussion with Design Concepts that could be the access point? Because isn't that a town easement right there?
Yeah, right here it is.
Yeah.
The other, you know, so this is urban drainage. This trail wouldn't work anyway. The
Steep grade.
and the predicted water flows in there are pretty intense. We could do a straight shot here, but direction from the board was to, you know, this is urban drainage and this is the school's property. So we'll have a little,
I thought part of the purpose of having that parking lot there was to offload the unloading, loading the students in front of the school.
you're
How
right.
do they get access to the school?
But if the school's not being cooperative, so the.
Yeah,
board is
so that's almost a $700,000 park if the town's putting it down at the school.
But they won't be able to get to the school
once
now,
they-
You
right?
need
once it's
parking no
built.
matter what, so I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that's.
They'll walk.
We need the
Genuine.
parking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
They'll walk across the grade.
But if you didn't put a parking lot in there, you're gonna park on Torrey's Peak or you're gonna park on Indiana, so
Yeah.
to say
They're gonna park
that
anywhere.
is very disingenuous, because you need parking for that park. And to say that we're putting it only in because of the school and that because they're not supporting it, I think is not right.
Well, no, but what we're saying is we're not gonna put.
We're not gonna
a
put a
trail-
concrete
We're not
trail.
gonna put a path on their property
But you
if
just
they're
said
not.
that that's a $700,000 thing and they're not supporting it. But we need parking for the park, so.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can see how that was maybe me speaking out of frustration.
I understand, I think it's frustrating that the school's not participating, but the park needs parking.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's gotta be somewhere, and that
It
is the
works.
best possible thing for parking
Right.
for that park.
It's
You're
an
right.
access point to the school.
Right, I get
Is
that,
what the
right.
town's not supporting right now because they're not getting support from the school. But obviously, when it's built and kids are gonna hop the
Yeah.
fence or whatever, the school might open their eyes. But that's the hope, I think, is that the school will be a little bit more open to cooperate.
Still in the budget for next year?
This thing's going, man. Town borrowed $2 million from the open space fund to build it, so. This will be done by the end of next year.
So how big is that green grass field? Do you know?
I can get it for you, I don't know.
I mean,
off the
just
top of my
curious,
head.
because I remember in previous plans, it was kind of this track around it and green grass in the whole space, and now we've cut out that corner. And it looks like you're flipping the volleyball court to the far side, which, you know, is just putting it way over there. I bet people are gonna park on Torrey's anyway, and that's gonna be the access point to the volleyball, and the basketball is gonna be from the parking lot.
That's why.
And to me, if you're gonna do it, I'd shift both of them, because I'd put the basketball further away, because there's basketball at the school. Just from a balance of recreation, that, you know, yes, it's a different type of basketball court, it's gonna be a little nicer than the little tot ones that they have over there, but the school does have some of those, you know, so it's just, anyway, more than anything, I was just noticing that big chunk out of there, and I was always envisioning like, you know, a flag football game going on out there, but I don't know, that's probably a lot bigger than one game, it's like 3 games.
Yeah, and
so
then
there's
it-
still plenty of space, probably.
And this
to
will
break
be,
that down.
the passive unprogrammed, you know. the
Yeah,
one-
and I view it like the ultimate people that are founders that, you know, they took a large space, and I think that could break down, but with that kind of, you know, acute corner in there, it's questionable about how much interaction you could potentially have on there without, and I'm not saying it's programmed or anything, but just how the field breaks down, how you could actually utilize.
I was asked how level that
I
green
know.
is. It's pretty level,
It's
right?
really
It's
level.
the green space.
But it's
outside
not
the whole-
being level.
I'm excited.
No,
Correct. It's the
it's
natural
level,
grade.
yeah. So those were the requested changes for the board, and we're moving, so.
I don't think it's not enough.
Yeah, I think people are excited to see it happen. Because people still don't know what all that program is anymore.
Most people that I've talked to don't think it's not. But they should show up.
Yeah, I mean, and it kind of even goes back to some of that stuff, is it's almost impossible to get everybody,
Oh, yeah.
you know, the information, so,
Yeah, but it's never been fields, has it?
never.
Never.
But people in second grade
Not
want
on a concept
Open
plan.
space where you
Oh,
can
yeah,
put
where
it
you
up
could
there.
put fields.
Yeah, yep.
In the original, one of the original groups we had a
They
field.
did show like a.
We discussed
There was
this.
some
I think
sort
it
of
was
field
the
there.
I think
the
so.
size of it.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
definitely a
Not
bunch of the
defending, I'm
groups.
just telling you.
Yeah.
It's not saying
What
it's
they-
programmed for one, but they, typically in designing it, you look at a field size so that you understand how big it is.
At one point, at one point, Design Concepts was doing that. They were saying how big that space was in
Yeah.
relation to like a U10 soccer field or whatever.
The
Politically
kind of
acceptable.
bifurcated trail is specific to make sure it doesn't become, you know, a lot of this, remember at one point, this came straight down the middle to make sure that it wouldn't ever evolve into a programmable space.
Now we put some rocks in there. Big ones.
You know, it kind of goes back to
Those
the,
rocks
you know,
are
if you don't want it to be programmed, you add a trail or you put a berm in the middle.
Or some
Put some
rocks.
rocks.
And some, yeah, and that's,
I view that as with the amount of soccer and baseball and football and all the other sports that are all trying to cram in a community park, and That's a great little space to have like 2-3 practices.
Well, and hopefully by
I don't think
in the
anyone-
2018 budget,
Yeah.
then the current talk is then when we will have the field at El Dorado in
Well,
2018.
you're getting a lot of cooperation from school right now. How's that going?
Field bond money comes in
bond
in
money.
2018.
The joint.
No, I'm just wondering, how is the school really cooperating?
You mean the,
Yeah,
You'd
two
have to-
separate conversations, yeah.
the baseball field on the other side?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's you know, there's been discussion that would be a joint agreement between school and
Yeah.
town, but part of the.
And that one,
We've been on for 2 years.
that one seems pretty receptive.
Oh, but it's,
Artificial
they got
turf
tools
field.
for it, you said, describe it, they got the tools. to
Yeah.
Maintain field. No, the turf field, they have all the maintenance.
So,
You're starting to see.
We have dedicated staff.
You're actually starting to see people evolve away. You know, the cancer scare in synthetic turf, that's gonna get legs here pretty quick.
Real fast.
You're already starting to see the cost of synthetic fields go through the roof because of the starting to leak cancer to the material that's in the chrome rubber. Since it's recycled tires.
so I believe at our last meeting, maybe before that was it BOCO, where we're looking for funding and for part of this and saying that the school can have so much use of it and that we're really hyping up the school's use of this area. Does that change language? I guess it's already been submitted.
It's already submitted.
Okay, so it doesn't change the language, it doesn't do anything now that there is no connectivity between, the fence is still there and.
Well, they can still walk there,
It
though.
still provides the same service to the school.
Yeah, they can
It's
still
just-
walk there, they
it's
just walk down the
that-
sidewalk, they
Okay.
just don't get the
Exactly.
little,
There's no
the little
formal
slick
pathway.
cut across that they could have if they weren't so
Yeah.
cutting off their
There's no
nose to spite
formal
their face. But
It still serves
They
a
could find the
purpose.
money in the PTA,
Yeah.
the school could find the
Yeah.
money.
And they will, because they'll realize that people are cutting
And
off their
all
nose.
it's really gonna, all it's really gonna require is then is to open up the fence. I mean, and then people are just gonna walk through.
No matter what, it'll be a great park.
Yeah.
There'll be community connection.
Yeah.
Well, we can't wait to see dirt being pushed around up there in
So-
February when it's
Busy
freezing
year.
cold.
We're nearing 10, so let's wrap up real quick. Next month, what we did last year was we had our December meeting at Old Chicago. Is everyone in favor of doing that again? We won't have a lot of business to discuss. If anything, it'll probably just be the Coal Creek crossing if we get approval to discuss that. We really don't have many agenda items left for the year, so just have a, really quick business meeting and just have a little bit of a holiday party. Is everyone okay with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm opposed to parties.
You are?
I'm close
Just
to holidays.
kidding.
Sandy's gonna run it.
Just
You're-
kidding.
Like the old Chicago or something?
Bah.
A non-secular celebration.
Yeah,
or solstice.
wherever.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's it.
something like that.
I'm not
I mean,
gonna-
does anyone have an idea other than Old Chicago?
Be great if.
Where are you gonna go?
Yeah,
I
if
mean,
we're.
we should go to Buffalo Wild Wings.
Good luck getting in there.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Actually, no.
Wednesday night, probably not, not right now. I can't think of it.
We could go to Murphy's, but it's in Louisville.
No.
No, we need to stay in
That's a no.
Superior, I believe.
Yeah, I don't know that the agreement still stands, the staff will pay for it, if it's in Louisville.
Yeah, your options are Panera, what, Panera,
Buffalo Wild
Buffalo
Wings.
Wild Wings, and Old Chicago.
Yeah, I would say go with
Even
Old
Wendy's
Chicago.
closed.
Is it Wendy's closed?
Yeah.
We worked at Old
Yeah.
C's. It was a little loud, but like I said, we
Old
didn't.
Chicago's fun.
Yeah, we didn't, I mean, and actually, I looked back through, I actually think we met here first and then went over. Because I think we
Was
did
it?
have I think we had a random discussion item last year.
No, we remember.
No, we met over there.
Didn't we come
did
here?
over there, no.
We just
I
did it
think,
there.
I think that was the
Well, I've
idea,
been
and
straight
then I think we
there.
met.
Yeah.
We just said go over there.
We met over there and.
And
then
everybody
did
was
just
there
have
when I
beers.
got there,
Perfect.
so.
Chris, trustee Hanson said he'd buy the first round of beers.
All right, so we'll
This year?
send out a
Steve did
reminder
it
on that,
last
but
year.
that's really the
Yeah,
plan.
probably need an RSVP on that.
Yeah, I'll get it. I think last year I just told them there's gonna be like 15 of us or 20, so they'd give us that whole corner. And then we just ordered a bunch of pizzas.
It was nice.
And then the last update item is the shade structures that we've been talking about. They've been ordered.
They're ordered.
How many?
You've met with the concrete contractor.
Yeah. color will match the existing play structure, so patina green roof and white frame.
Awesome.
So you got enough for 3?
Yep.
3 with 2 concrete slabs?
3 with 2 concrete slabs and footers on the third and at the bike park.
At the bike park.
Yep.
You gonna be trying it before it's snowfall?
As long as, no, we, you know, as long as the product's concrete, yes, but I bet you the lead time on those, I mean, I think we'll probably have them maybe right before Christmas. And then,
I say they're pretty bad off the shelf.
yeah, I mean, other than the color, we just shot them a ton of pictures of the green roofs that we had and said, get as close as possible. Now that we've got that faded green.
possible.
That sounds very specific.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how you can,
Anyway,
I don't know how you replicate 20-year-old faded teal green, other than telling someone to try to get
I
as
think
close
we
as
repainted
possible.
all the old ones.
Yeah, that's what we should
Along
do.
with the fence.
That's a whole other project.
Oh, you're talking about the town fence color?
Yeah.
What is it, 27 miles?
28 miles of fence we
And that's just the town, what's joint town homeowner?
We didn't lose.
Not
Residents
just
lost,
homeowners.
residents lost fences this storm, we didn't. So we were lucky. But that's a whole other side of the department that's, yeah.
That includes fences that, where homeowner backs to open space, things that.
Well, yeah, the town doesn't have a lot of freestanding fence.
Actually-
It's mostly adjoining the private property.
Yeah.
It's town property.
And technically, the town doesn't own any of the fence. The town maintains what backs up to open space.
And
It's
just the outside of that.
it's technically the homeowner's fence, and in a lot of cases, we've made the repairs because we want it to aesthetically look one way, and a lot of times we'll approach a resident and they have no interest in fixing their fence.
That's good to know
This
before I
is an
spend
issue of
$100
the-
on,
who actually owns it.
what is it?
Oh,
The,
between us and
the cedar, well, I put a gated too.
town.
but
The homeowner and the
I have
town.
an extra,
Yeah.
a cedar to replace a large board, and those things aren't cheap.
No, fence is a whole other, that's a whole other headache. No.
Can I ask?
Yeah,
about-
the committee can have that one, you can have the fence.
Can I ask you about the healthy recipe contest?
Sure.
Since I've been sitting here looking at it all night, was that something the town did?
Yeah, so town, internally as staff, we thought it'd be cool to have a wellness committee. Just to
Ah.
encourage each other to get off our butts and do stuff. You know, a lot of us, like, we're all gonna try to run the stocking run together. And then we used to do, the town forever's done a big pie baking contest, but nobody was really participating, so they said, hey, this year, you know. And then we planned a couple of like staff hikes together and just trying to be a little more active. 'Cause
Some of the titles were interesting. I mean, I've been sitting here looking at it all night, so I was like, I want to know what Yo Mama soup chili is. So.
Yeah.
On that, are we adjourned?
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
Have we adjourned, Peter?
Adjourned.
Awesome.
So one thing I was gonna bring up to you, the,
Oh, real quick. So if we're gonna bring this up, the Coal Creek crossing to the board.
Oh, yeah. You're not going to be there.
I was not planning to be in town Monday evening. I was gonna leave like the day after. So I can write a letter and submit it and ask that it be read at the board meeting. Or if someone wants to volunteer,
If you write it, I'll volunteer to read it.
well, or you could volunteer to just prepare your statement. I mean, I don't know.
You're
Oh, I
so
gotta
good
write a
at
letter.
this. You're so good at it.
All right.
I'll be happy
This
to
one
read it
doesn't
for
like
you.
me.
But, all right, so if I write a letter, I'll try to
Have the
distribute
little
it to everyone.
switch on the front.
Thank you.
I don't know. Saturday. I wasn't gonna be in town past
what I
tomorrow
was gonna say is,
either, so.
Why?
It doesn't have to be very
I'm
complicated.
gonna go
Just
bring
like
her
me.
All shirt, but her last job though was, she was in charge of corporate fitness for a fairly large
Well, and
company.
I do say.
And so what she did was, she would organize the things and either she would bring it up herself, so like, she would organize she would organize for the companies like, events like smoking cessation and teach the smoking cessation classes. Bring in somebody to get folks trained in CPR, right?
Well, it's in your contract.
you know,
But I couldn't find out
competitions
what it
for
was.
healthy competitions. Hey, let's have a body fat competition. City, you know, you can do citywide things like this, or you could, there's lots of things. But it, you know, you could think of the city almost as a corporation and have a corporate, you know, fitness that starts bringing up these programs, and these programs are cheap.
I'm telling you, so this is
And by the way,
the,
so Mrs. Removal, she's been retired and
well, so I've had this since the day I started here, because I had
and by the way, she does have her own insurance. We've been paying, $1 million for insurance for this thing for years. She's been keeping up for surgeons.